All righty, guys. I hope all of you had a safe but fun New Year's Eve. I have turned into an old man, and I sat my rear end at the house, and I watched sports and the Pacific and gosh, what is it? Band of Brothers for probably the 30th time for each of them. So hopefully y'all had a great New Year's and a great start to 2024. And I'm excited because we are starting 2024 with a he won't like me saying this, but a legend in the Ranger community. Well, in military, in the whole military community. Today, we are joined by none other than Master Sergeant retired Max Mullin. He served with honor with three of the Ranger regiments. If I'm not mistaken, I need to be sure on this. He made a combat jump with 275 during Urgent Fury. He is a EIB badge holder. He spent 26 years in the military, not only being a Ranger instructor as well, but also serving, like I said, with all of the regiment. So before I mess up any more of his bio, I'm going to hand it off to him and let him get it straight for us and let him kind of run through a bio of his career. And it's quite the amazing career. So, Mr. Max, the floor is yours, and thank you for joining us, sir.
Hey, I want to thank you, Bud, for giving me the invite to your podcast. A B-side research and archivist, and you're doing a very important thing. You're keeping alive the history of our special operations, and I'm a really, really firm believer in keeping our history, because as our country goes through this transition. They want to erase a lot of our history. They want to change the history. And so it's men like you, Bud, that's keeping our history alive. It's teaching our future generations. And I want to commend you for the job that you're doing. And also like to say thank you for giving me this invite to your show to start off the new year. I'd like to go ahead and introduce myself to the audience. My name is Master Sergeant, retired, Howard H. Max Mullin. Everybody called me Max. That's the name that I received when I was a Ranger instructor, Mad Max, because I was very hard on Ranger, but I was very fair on Ranger also. But I received the name Mad Max, and so it just stuck. But like he shared with you, I had that rare opportunity to serve in all three of the Ranger battalions and also serve at regimental headquarters. And what made it so unique is I served in the Ranger battalions when it was just two Ranger battalions, the first and second battalion before the regiment was formed. And I had the opportunity to serve when it became a regiment in the 3rd Ranger Battalion, and also served at regimental headquarters into the modern era. I also was a Ranger instructor from 2 eras when it was just called the Benning Ranger Department, and I became a plank holder when it transitioned over to the 4th RTB, 4th Ranger Training Brigade, as you know it now, or the Army Ranger Training Brigade, which is now, I was a plank holder. I was there at the very beginning when this started. I always tell people, you always have to prepare yourself for change, but not necessarily all change is good, but you have to adapt to the change. I remember my drill sergeant once told me, Drill Sergeant Vandell, he said, one thing about the Army, he said, you can't fight the system, you just got to roll with the punches, You just call us Willie. I never understood that until I retired. So you just have to roll with the punches, and you try and share your knowledge, because as the Bible tells us, there's nothing new under the sun. A lot of things happen. We go ahead and see it again. A lot of things that we're seeing now in the past is recurring and making its fruitation right now. But my military career started, I had to really go back to the beginning. I was born in Fort McClellan, Alabama, back in 1958. I was doing just before the Civil Rights Movement back in 58. My father, he was an Army band at Fort McClellan. And I have to give really do homage to my dad, because he was my mentor. And that shows you the importance of having a father in the family as your mentor. But my dad was an amazing man. Even though he didn't serve in combat arms, he was an amazing man. He attended FAMU, which is famous all-black college, HBU. college down in Gainesville, Florida. Not Gainesville, but in Tallahassee, Florida. He was in the famous Marching 100 band. Those you don't know about the Marching 100, all you gotta do is Google it. Amazing band. He was a musician, a very talented musician. He played the tuba, he played the trumpet, he played the piano. An amazing man, and he had the opportunity to play as a backup as a studio musician with Ray Charles, just after he got out of college. And my dad even told me that he dated Althea Gibson. She was the first Black American to win the Wimbledon and so forth like that. And so he joined the Army, and my dad, he played at JFK's, John F. Kennedy inauguration. And my dad also played at Eisenhower, President Dwight David Eisenhower's funeral when he was stationed with the 5th Army Band. So my dad was part of history, and it's very honored to be part of that legacy. And again, my dad, he was a bandsman, but I always wanted to be a soldier. I tell people that I was born to be a soldier. But my father being in the military, and I have a very, very fond memory. I remember things when I was 5 years old, growing up. And I can tell you the things that back then in the 50s and late 50s, early 60s, seeing how our world is now is like it's a night and day. And I don't even recognize America anymore. But I remember my dad, he was stationed in Okinawa. We had the opportunity to fly to Okinawa. And I remember flying from Cincinnati, Ohio to San Francisco, from San Francisco up to Seattle, SeaTac, Alaska, Anchorage, on our journey over there to Okinawa. And I remember flying on the Flying Tiger Airlines, old props, 4 prop planes, flying on the prop planes and taking long trips. And as a kid, it leaves an impact on you. And we landed on Okinawa. And little did I know that Okinawa would be the start of an amazing career that I give God all the glory for blessing me to be, meet some extraordinary people and do participate in some extraordinary things and see history being unfolded. And I tell a lot of people, you heard about the 173rd Airborne Brigade. They fought at Junction City. They deployed Battle of Dak To. They did the combat jump into Operation Junction City in Vietnam, the first combat jump since the Korean War. And I was there when the 173rd stood up. I was a dependent when the 173rd Airborne Brigade stood up on Okinawa. I remember going to their first organization day. After they stood up, they had an organization day where they invited the public, the dependents, to come out there and see the capabilities of the 173rd Airborne Brigade. And little did I know that at that time I was seeing history unfold. I remember they had the weapons layout. They had these 30 cal machine guns, and they had the 30 cal machine guns, the M16s, some had M14s. And they had the displays. They were putting on a combatives demonstration. And I remember they had this little tower, a little kitty mock tower, a Slide for Life mock tower. And I vividly remember going up there, and the airborne sergeant, he had those khakis on, starch, spit-shine boots, and he had that white t-shirt on, and he said, you want to be airborne? I said, yes, sir. Put me in the little harness, and he said, when you go down there, I want you to holler Geronimo. And he pat me on the butt, and I went slide down there hollering Geronimo. I must get on that thing about 2 or 3 times, but I was hooked in that moment. And growing up in Okinawa was a blast being a dependent on Okinawa, because you have to remember the war. Just basically, you still see the effects out there. I remember going to the beach, but certain areas of the beach were still off limits. I remember one time my dad pointed to some cliffs, and he said, well, a lot of people lost their lives there. The Japanese were jumping off, committing suicide, after the Americans invaded Okinawa. And I remember seeing the cliffs, and a lot of the caves are still off limits to people going in there. And I remember my first encounter with a Special Forces soldier. I was a young dependent, and my mom's best friend, her husband was in Special Forces, and his name was Staff Sergeant Cherry. And I remember she would babysit us. And I remember Sergeant Cherry came in, and he had these khakis on, jump boots looking like glass, and he had a green beret on. And I was mesmerized. And he would talk to me, cheer me up. And I remember he put his green beret on my head. He said, you want to be a Green Beret? I said, yeah, I want to be a Green Beret. And it just stuck with me. And I'd go outside. I remember jumping off our house with an umbrella. My mom, she freaked out. I jumped to the hedges. I had no fear as a young kid because I knew I was destined and born to be a soldier. So fast forward, living on Okinawa, going into the jungle and just playing soldier. You know, now the kids like to play Call of Duty Modern Warfare, but we were feral kids. You couldn't keep it indoor. We woke up in the morning, our mom and dad would kick us out. You don't want to see you till the sun goes down. Just being before dark, or you got to pay the consequences. But we'd play out in the woods and we just play soldier in the jungle. And we were just kids having fun. We weren't caught up in the Call of Duty Modern Warfare. We'd fight, we'd mix it up. I remember our mom, she taught me a valuable lesson. It was a young man named Tony Futch. I'll never forget his name. We were playing and we got to a fight, a little scrimmage, a little knuckle up. And he beat me up pretty bad. And I remember I went home and I was crying. And my mother said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Well, Tony Futch beat me up." And my mother looked at me. She said, "What?" I said, "Well, he beat me up." My mom said, "Let's go." And my mom, she took me by the hand. We walked across the cul-de-sac, up the little hill, knocked on the quarters. And I remember the lady came to the door and she said, "Well, yes, may I help you?" And she said, "Is your son here?" She said, "Yes." And the lady was like, "What's going on?" And she said, "Can you tell him to come here?" And so I remember seeing Tony come up behind his mom. And he had this little snide look on his face. You know, his mom had the screen door open. And she kept saying, "What's going on? Why are you here?" And my mom said, "Get him." I looked at my mom and said, "What?" She said, "Get him. Beat him up now." And I feared my mom, so I grabbed him and we just throwing down right there. And we took it out and I remember we rolled down the hill and, the lady was freaking out. My mom kept saying, "Get him, get him, get him." And my mom told the lady, "If you try and break it up, we're going to start fighting." And so, as little 5-year-old kids, you just basically just rolled around and stuff. She broke it up. And the lady, I remember she said she's going to call MPs. And my mom said, "Let's go." We walked down the cul-de-sac, crossed the cul-de-sac, walked to the house. And I remember my mom said, she said, "Boy, don't you ever let anybody, beat you up and you don't fight back. Don't you ever." She said, "If somebody hits you, you hit them back and you beat them down as bad as you can." And she said, "I will deal with the consequences." She said, "Don't you ever." And you got to remember my mom, she was a young lady, a young independent lady, 19 years old, growing up in the civil rights movement in the South. So she had to be tough. She had to be tough. And she wanted to raise us to be tough, my sister and I. But I never forget that. And it stuck with me for the longest. Not to know any fear. And so when we came back, we left Okinawa. My dad was stationed at Fort Sheridan, Illinois, up there on the Great Lakes. And he was stationed with the 5th Army Band, and Fort Sheridan was a small installation. But the 5th Army Band was one of the best bands in the United States Army. You had the Army Band, and you had the 5th Army Band, and nobody can touch the 5th Army Band. Their precision in marching and, being able to, I remember being at home, my dad would bring, the group of the guys that come over to the house and they play music, live music. My dad was part of the jazz ensemble with the Army Band. And they go over and rehearse at the house and see these amazing musicians, playing these saxophones and, preparing for what my dad would call a gig. And little did I know how much that affected me, giving me a love for music. And my dad was really, really involved, even though he wasn't combat arms or anything, he was a musician and he was good. Had opportunity to go and see him do these amazing things with the band. And see him, he's on a couple of orchestra albums when the 5th Army Band played with this famous composer that came over. And I still got those albums to this day. And I remember in 68, we would go outside and play, like I said, as kids. And back in 1968, the movie John Wayne and the Green Berets came out. And they played it at the matinee. And we would get on the little shuttle bus. And we went every Saturday to that matinee to watch that movie, John Wayne and the Green Berets. And we would get out to the woods and we'd play, VC, NVA, I Want to Be S, Special Forces Today. And I remember during that time, around a month later, a Special Forces recruiting team came to Fort Sheridan, a 12-man A team, and they were recruiting. And they were from 7th Group, because I remember they had the 7th Group flashes. And we hung around those guys all day. we hung around, we helped them lay their equipment out, and they took us to lunch to give us some patches, and we just hung with those guys all day and said, you guys are going to be special forces one day, just, do well, do good, eat your spinach and so forth. But it's things like that that stick with you as a kid. And I would read everything I can about warfare, everything. I would spend countless hours in the library, just countless hours in the library reading books by S.L.A. Marshall, reading books like Drop Zone, reading about World War II, reading about D-Day, reading about Korean War. And at that time, Vietnam War was just beginning to start heating up. And I remember, coming home from school, watching on TV, the ABC News, NBC. I remember watching Tet Offense take place. I remember they would have the body counts of soldiers and showing the soldiers doing scorched earth. But going back, I tell these kids, when you know history, the importance of knowing history, you can't be fooled. And I remember as a kid, watching John and Glenn go up in space. I wanted to be an astronaut at one time. Joined a little space club, and I remember the Gemini program, the Mercury program, the Gemini programs. I remember all the Apollo missions. I knew exactly what I was doing, where I was at. I remember when JFK was assassinated. I really didn't understand what was going on. We watched the funeral procession, and I remember my mom, she was mourning and crying because a lot of Black Americans loved JFK. They loved him. And just seeing his funeral. And I remember when Lee Harvey Oswald was shot, they showed that. When he was shot, they talk about that. And I remember when Martin Luther King was assassinated, I was getting ready to go to school when Sirhan shot, Bobby Kennedy. Just to see these historic events takes place and being a part of it. But I remember the Tet Offensive of '68, watching it on TV. And little did I know, I remember the invasion of Cambodia. I remember all these things. And I remember some of the vets would come back, they would talk to me, but for some reason, I just wanted to be a part of war. I remember reading about, the German offense on doing the front, the Flossenjägers, the German Airborne. This is when I was a kid in high school, in grade school. I read these books. I remember about Dien Bien Phu. I was reading about Dien Bien Phu when I was in sixth grade. The Streets Without Joy, knowing that these things would come through, would be a very important part of my life. I remember reading about the D-Day invasion, 101st jumping in, 82nd Airborne jumping in. I remember, reading about, I remember when the movie Longest Day came out. We would go to the movie and watch Longest Day, Patton. We just go back and forth just to watch the movie Longest Day. And when John Wayne talked about they getting ready to go in, and little did I know, watching these shows, I kept saying, man, I want to get that combat infantryman's back. Man, I want to be able to do a combat jump. Man, I want to do this. These things further my career became true. I remember when I was in high school, the growing up when the Black Panthers Party, all this stuff. I remember that my sister used to date Black Panthers. I remember the riots. I remember the '68 riots of Chicago Convention. And when the police department just went down and gave them guys a beat down like hell. And if we should take a picture from what the Chicago Police Department did to those protesters, we wouldn't have this madness going on now. But I remember watching this stuff unfold on TV. And little did I know, that this stuff would come around. I remember Jesse Jackson, Operation Breadbasket. I remember all this stuff growing up. Angela Davis, the Black Panthers Party, all this stuff. How this would affect me growing up when I get older. But the good thing about being independent is when you're living on the, I remember watching when the Beatles first came in 1964 on the 65 or 66 on the Ed Sullivan Show. I remember the first when the Monkees, I remember just the first episode of Batman, Get Smart, all these TV shows, Bonanza, every Sunday, you're looking at Walt Disney. It wasn't as creative as it is today, but it's growing up and we were a family. The family ate together as a family. We did things together as a family. The father was present in the family. It was none of this madness. We'd be able to go outside and just play out late. They had to worry about rape, kidnappings, anything like that, because these things were unheard of. We had opportunity to be a kid. I remember going down to the South, learning skills, survival skills. Little did I know they were survival skills. My grandfather would go down south and, traveling in the South back in the 60s, going from up there in Chicago, you see the transition and change as you go down, especially being a Black man. But they talk about all this racism, but racism, it was there, but racism wasn't nothing like it is today. It's worse than it was back then. I remember down in Florida, we go down to Ocala, and my grandfather had a farm, was prosperous, had cows, and we did farm chores. I remember I go out to the woods with my grandfather. This is where I learned these skills. I go out to the woods with my grandfather. We get possum, raccoon. We prepare that stuff. We put it up in, I learned how to possum, raccoon, alligator, turtles. And that was just common food. But you talk about those foods now, they say, "Ugh, that's nasty." But now people are paying thousands of dollars to learn these skills. And I learned this as a kid. And how things go back, learn these skills as a kid and how these things would affect me when I joined the military. And I tell people I joined the Boy Scouts. And I remember my scoutmaster, Richard Butler. Man, this guy, a white man, left such an impact on my life. It was like, he was a former Marine, and Mr. Butler did not play. He had no racism and stuff. And I remember one time, he set me straight, and he told my mom gave him permission. But the things that Mr. Butler taught me, I would never forget that. And fast forward, I had an opportunity. I didn't think he was still alive. And I saw my scoutmaster again after almost over 50 or 60, almost 50 years I saw him. And I tell you, when I went to see him, he was much older. But when I hugged him, I was that 12-year-old kid again. And we're still friends to this day. My scoutmaster's still alive. When I told him how much an impact he had, the skills he taught me. We went to Canada to the 50-mile foot in the Floto expedition. These skills that he taught me as a kid, how they resonated and made me a better person, and little did I know it would make me a better soldier. And so I remember Sergeant Lester Long. I was really good at wrestling. I was an accomplished wrestler in high school and had a lot of opportunities to do great things, but my heart was, I wanted to be a soldier. And I wanted to be a soldier so bad that I remember my friend George Harper, best friend, we hang out. We were going to the woods and just do crazy things. And his brother joined the Marines and said, "Well, I just want to do something." And I tried to join the Marines at 17. And I remember going to the Marine recruiting office because I just wanted to serve. And we went to the Marine recruiting office, and the Marines looked at me because I was only 17. I was 5'8", I weighed 100. I weighed 95 pounds my freshman year in high school, and I joined the Army weighing 115. So I was a Marine. He looked at me and said, "Hey, finish school." Best advice that Marine ever gave me. And so I was going out. The recruiter at the weigh-in said, "Come here." And I went down there with my friend, and his name was Staff Sergeant Lester Long. He said, "You don't want to be a Marine." He said, "What do you want to be?" I said, "I want to be a soldier. I want to be special forces. I want to be infantry." And he said, "Finish school." He said, "Finish school." I said, "Okay." And he said, "Let me show you something." He served with the 1st Cav in Vietnam. He was an Aero Scout with a pink team on the Loach. And he was showing me these pictures of him in Vietnam, the fire bases, some of the missions, straight up Apocalypse Now stuff, him with his Stutzers on. And those images stuck with me. And he would come pick us up. And he would tell me about his experience in Vietnam. I said, "Man, I can't wait to join." And so that day, August 9th, 1976, little did I know that my life would change forever. Sergeant Long came, knocked on the door. My mom and dad didn't believe I was joining the Army. And I said, "Mom, I'm telling you, I'm gone." And I left home with $20 in my pocket, a change of t-shirt, underwear, toothpaste, toothbrush, towel, and never looked back. I was not I never went look back. I never had to ask my mom or dad for anything, because when I stepped out that door at 9 August, I was a man. And I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Again, you remember this is the 76, our country's 100-year centennial, the 76 Olympics. So a lot of things were going on at the time. Our company's going through a serious transition. The war was over. I remember in high school when the war officially ended, all the bells in the town rang when the war officially ended. I remember watching the evacuation of Saigon. I remember a couple of weeks later, they had the Battle of Cotain Island when they took the USS Maya Grass when the Marines attacked Cotain Island. And seeing, I said, "Man, I got to get into the fight." I remember reading about, I remember they talked about ripcord, LZ ripcord in Vietnam, when the 101st, that last big battle when the Army was downsized. I remember when they turned it over, and I remember when the North Vietnam did their invasion. And I remember just slowly watching how Afghanistan, exactly like it was when we evacuated Vietnam. We didn't go to their aid or anything. And to see that T-55 tank crash through the palace in Vietnam and the NVA took over, the Vietnamization, the boat people, you know, again, the Bible says that history repeats itself. There's nothing new under the sun. You know, the mass migration of these people, you're seeing this thing, and you're saying, wow. And then I joined, when I went to basic training, my drill sergeant, every one of my drill sergeants except for one, Vietnam veterans, 173rd, combat engineers. And what they did, our basic training is a flipping joke. It's a joke. You know, they got this 1,000-mile walk, and, you know, this Generation X, Z, whatever you want to call it. But we got there, and I remember we got there at the reception center around old dark 30. We filled out endless paperwork. Then a couple of days, we got our uniforms issued, and we're just waiting around for the drill sergeants to arrive. And I remember these we call them cattle trucks, came up. And I remember drill sergeants. You never forget the drill sergeants. You never forget them. One of them was Drill Sergeant Richards, big, muscular bodybuilder type guy. Reminded me of Sergio Olivia. They were being Drill Sergeant Gore. He was there. They're being real nice to us. Oh, let me help you put your bags on there. And they just drove us around. It was hot as hell. They drove us around. And I said, where are they taking us? And they just drove us around to get us all misoriented. Little did I know, years later, there was no more than a half a mile down the road, but they just took us all over the base. And I remember that the vehicle stopped, doors opened up, and the first one I saw was Drill Sergeant Gore. Drill Sergeant Hackman. And I said, hi. I waved at him. And this guy, I never seen a white person turn beet red like that. I thought he was about to explode. He just looked at me, started shaking, and every explicit word that came rolling out, I didn't know what the hell half the words he was saying came out, and we just like a tsunami wave of bodies just piling out. And they were screaming at us, and just like, you know, you didn't know how to stand at attention. People dropping left to right, made us dump all our bags. People low crawling, utter damn chaos. A lot of that stuff they did to us that first day, hell, it's probably just about getting out of Leavenworth. But little did I know, everything they did to had a purpose. It had a purpose. And I remember, you know, say, get in the building, and you go to the building first route, and drill sergeants appear there. Man, how the hell, where did this guy come from? You know, you're looking, drill sergeant in your face, hollering, spittle all on your glasses. And I remember we started going up there, and there's utter chaos. In that first night, you're laying in the barracks, you're saying, man, what the hell did I get myself into? And a lot of guys cried that night because I was one of them. I said, man, what did I get myself into? And it was a shock. But our drill sergeants, they took us from being kids. You had guys from New York. You had guys from all over, and you had to make it into one cohesive force. And he had so much time. I remember I had a guy named Spud from Idaho. Never saw a black man. Never saw a black man. He looked at me, and I said, what are you looking at? He said, I've never seen a black person before. I said, you joke? He said, no, you're the first black person. You know, this is the first time I've ever been around black people. And he said, can I feel your hair? And I thought he was joking. I said, yeah, go ahead. He touched my hair, and he said, wow. And Spud he was fat, you know, and the drill sergeant made him run around the whole formation. Everywhere we went, Mark, he had to run around the formation, just like Powell in Full Metal Jacket. And Spud lost so much flipping weight that they had to send him back to get a whole new issue before he graduated. But Spud, he came here as a kid. We all came here as a kid. And by the time it was time to leave, the drill sergeant had to threaten us to get on the bus because we didn't want to leave. We did not want to leave. And that's the impact that the drill sergeant left on us. We came so close. And because the drill sergeants are hard, they didn't cut us no slack. I mean, I remember we'd be low crawling downstairs. They call it harassment and hazement, but we call it building us into a man. And then I remember we drove down all the way to Fort Benning, Georgia. That's where the infantry was at. And I remember we rode, it took us around a day and a half, 2 days. And we pulled up at Fort Benning, and we went to the reception center, and we had to sing the song "Follow Me," the infantry song, and had to coming up on the display. We got our issue, and I was the first one there of the 11 Charlie. I didn't get SF, but I got 11 Charlie, and I got Korea as my first duty station. But I remember I was there to show you the impact that leadership has on a person. And so we had to wait for a 0 week because for our company to fill up. So we're there for a week. And I remember Drill Sergeant Vandell, this man, young E5, the porn stash beard, mustache, he would call us Willies. And he said, "Mullen, you're going to be a team leader." I said, I don't want to be drill sergeant. I don't know. He said, "You will be a team leader." And so he made me a team leader. I was scared of leadership, but he said, "You will be a team leader." And he said, "You will sing cadence." I used to like to sing. So we sang cadence, and I was a team leader for a month. And then we went through that. And I'll tell you, Drill Sergeant Vandell and Drill Sergeant Hagman, these guys left such an impact on our lives. And he used to call us Willie. And so my first duty station was Korea. And so I remember going to Korea, and you had this, you hear these rumors about the Korean War, and so I remember we got there, we flew into Osan, and it was a great cold day in January. That's after I came home from leave. I came home for leave for 30 days. And when I came on leave, I had a 30-day leave. I came home, and I got with my friends. We had nothing in common, nothing whatsoever, nothing. They would talk about stuff back on the block. I talk about the new experience I did, but we had zero in common. I was a new person. I was not that same kid back on the block. I was transformed. I was a soldier. I was born to be a soldier. And when I went to Korea, I was assigned to 1st of the 72nd Armor, a tank battalion, but I was 11 Charlie, and they had like a platoon of 11 Charlies in charge, of give fire support for the battalion. So I got there, they had M60 tanks, M113 mortar carriers. And the thing about it is, 2nd Infantry Division at that time, it was on a combat footing. Every month we had an unannounced alert, division alert, where the sirens would go off and you drop everything you do. You run back to the barracks, you draw weapons. We kept ammunition on the vehicles, and we rode off to a battle position. It was absolutely unbelievable serving at that time, because you had a sense and a purpose. And I remember we're there, myself, Piccarelli, and Knox, we were the first ones there, and the rest of the whole battalion was out there on maneuvers. And it was cold. The average temperature in Korea probably get down to 30 below zero wind chill factors. And I remember they came back through the barracks, and they were like harassing us, like calling us cherries, go do this and that, like a bunch of little gophers. And the first field trip out there, they didn't have heater in the vehicles. I remember it was so cold, it got down to 30 below zero. We're moving open track vehicles. You have the equipment that you issued from 1950 sleeping bag, but you learn how to deal with hardship. I probably had frostbite. I was too stupid to even know I had frostbite, but we dealt with that extreme climates, and it was nothing to us. And we were really tight. But little did I know, I remember I would go down to the village, get drunk, get stupid, get disrespectful to the non-commissioned officers, and because we lived for the village. And I remember we got a new platoon sergeant in, and he came in, and we got all smart and stuff. He said, "Hey, we're going to tell him what, we're going to show him and stuff." And he came in there, and he didn't play. And he called me into his office. He said, "We got a detail, blah, 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 blah." He said, "Mom," I said, "What?" He said, he looked at me like, "What did you say?" I said, "What?" He said, "You mean what sergeant?" I said, "Well, yeah, what sergeant?" And he said, "Report to my Quonset hut after formation." I said, "Okay." He said, "Okay, sergeant." "Okay, sergeant." And as we dismissed from the formation, they said, "Hey," I said, "Man, that guy ain't gonna do nothing. Man, he just like the other these guys, man. We run this platoon." I went up there and said, hey, Sergeant Gore wants to see you. So I'll go up there and knock on his door. He said, the platoon sergeant wants to see you. I'll go there and knock on his door. He said, "Wait a minute." I said, "Damn, okay." He said, "All right, come on in." I go inside. He was sitting on this bunk. He was a Vietnam veteran, Vietnam vet. You know, he was the black platoon sergeant. He was a Vietnam vet. He was sitting there, and I saw the commo platoon sergeant. I saw the radar missile section. I saw the maintenance. I saw the platoon sergeant there looking around, and he was sitting there. And he said, "Close the door. Close the door." He said, "You got something to say now, Private?" And I bucked up real fast. I said, "No, Sergeant." He said, "Get your parade rest." I got a parade rest. He got my face and said, if you ever disrespect me in front of my platoon," he said, "I will kill you. I will bury you down there in one of them damn rice paddies. And don't you ever disrespect me. You understand that, Private?" I said, "Yes, Sergeant." And oh my God, he went into me. Then he gave me a blast to my gut. I went down to my knees, and I remember the rest of the platoon sergeants started lighting me up. And I remember him saying, "Don't hit him in the face. Don't hit him in the face." And after a couple of, a little wall-to-wall counseling call back then, he got me back at parade rest and all this stuff. He said, "Straighten yourself up." He said, "When you go back to that barracks and they ask you what happened, you tell them you slipped in the shower. You understand that?" I said, "Yes, Sergeant." He said, "What happened?" "I slipped in the shower, Sergeant." He said, "Another thing, you will go before the Soldier of the Month board and you will win the Soldier of the Month board. You understand that, Private?" I said, "Yes, Sergeant." I went back to the barracks. They saw me. They said, "What happened?" I said, "I slipped in the shower." And they said, "Oh, hell no, you need to go. He can't beat you." I said, "Look, I slipped in the shower." And so for the next month, I studied while the rest of the guys went to the village to get drunk. I studied for the Soldier of the Month board. I went before the board. I remember what Sergeant said. He said, "You will win it." I won the board. I walked in there like I walked into the old guard. And they said, "PFC Mullen, your CSC 1st Battalion's Soldier of the Month." I said, "Wow." Then he said, "You're going to go to brigade." I went to brigade, one brigade. You're going to go to division, one division. Then he said, "You're going to go to division, soldier quarter." I went division, soldier quarter. And I said, "Man, it's not bad." But he was preparing me to be a soldier. And so I'm in Korea less than 6 months. I get elevated, and all of a sudden he said, "Hey, you got the EIB going, Expert Instruments badge." And he said, "You're going to get it." So I remember it was 4 of us went to get the EIB, and we got the EIB, the Expert Instruments badge. And people ask me, "What do I hold dear to me?" My combat instrument badge, my expert instrument badge. I said, bar none, an expert instrument badge. They said, "Why is that?" "Because it showed that I'm an expert in my field as an instrument." You had to go through these tasks, 12-mile road march, all these tasks. And you only have 2 chances. You get a go the first time, you get a no-go the first time, you get a retest, you flunk the retest second time, that's it, till next year. But I made it through. And I remember getting my EIB pinned on. I remember getting my EIB, and we were waiting for, I remember getting my EIB pinned on in one of the most proudest moments of my life. And so then I remember we went on our maneuvers for Team Spirit. We went to Team Spirit, and we're out there in our battle positions. And I remember they said, "Hey, we got a new division commander coming." No, let me back up. We got a new division commander go. This is before I received my EIB. We have a new division commander coming. His name is Major General David E. Grange. He's taking over the division, 2nd Division, and he's going around, flying around, checking on the different positions here on the welfare of the soldiers. And so I remember the tune say, "Get your track squared away, make sure everything's good to go, make sure people in uniform." And I remember my squad leader, I was the gunner because he was training to be a gunner as a PFC. He said, "Mullen, don't you F this up." I said, "I won't, Sergeant, I won't." And I remember General Grange landed, the little entourage came and went to the FDC track, platoon leader followed him. Then they came to our track, CS41. And when General Grange, when he walked up on our track, General Grange, if you don't know him, you Google his name, best rated competition named after General Grange. General Grange did 2 combat jumps. He did a combat jump when he was 17 years old with the 82nd Airborne. He also did a combat jump. I think he did 3 combat jumps. He did 2 during World War II with the 82nd Airborne. And he also did a jump with the 187th Regimental Combat Team when he was an officer in Korea. He had 2 stars on the CIB for service in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And he had those 2 stars. He didn't have a 3rd star. He had the 2 stars on his master jump wings, and he had that Ranger tab on. and I was mesmerized. And he walked up there, and this is the division commander of the 2nd Division, in charge of over 60,000 combat soldiers. Walked on my track, and he said, "What is this?" I said, "Sir, it's a 4.2-inch mortar." And I was nervous. He said, "Young man, just relax, relax." He said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Zion, Illinois, sir." He said, "Okay, what do you do?" And so for the next 15 to 20 minutes, he just sat there and he talked to me. This is the division commander. He talked to me, said, "What you want to be?" And I wanted to be myself, but I kept looking at that Ranger tab. I said, I want to be a Ranger, sir." He said, "You want to be a Ranger?" I said, "I want to be a Ranger, sir." He said, Then he told me about his son. At that time, Captain Grant. He said, "My son was a platoon leader in L Company Rangers 75th in Vietnam, but right now he's currently serving over the 1st Ranger Battalion at Hunter Army Airfield." And I said, "Wow." And he said, "Yeah, I was in charge." He said that when he was at Ranger School, he talked about his experience in Ranger School and so forth. And then he said, "You really want to be around?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he called his aide up, said, "Captain McKnight, and come take this young man's information and make sure he gets squared away." And Captain McKnight, little did I know, it was the same Captain Danny McKnight, Black Hawk Down fame. Black Hawk Down.
Wow.
So Danny McKnight came up there and he took my information down. He said, "Well, I'll get back with you." And so I remember he left, and I remember General Granger's words. He said, "You be the best soldier you can be. Be the best soldier you can be. You learn everything you can, and you be a subject matter expert." The reason I'm getting emotional is because here people talk about racism, but here's a white man, a division commander, going to sit there and talk to me, some little PFC, skinny black kid from Zion, Illinois, but he spoke to me. And then fast forward 4 months later, a few months later, I'm getting my EIB pin done. So he comes down giving awards out. So I got a picture of him giving that award. And he said, "You still want to be a Ranger?" I said, "Yes, sir." I thought he forgot about it. He said, "Captain McKnight's working on it." I said, "Thank you, sir." So in a year and a half, I did 18 months my first tour, because that man motivated me. My platoon sergeant beat me down and got me straight. I was a 2-time battalion, brigade, division soldier of the quarter for the 2nd Infantry Division. I was the division Taekwondo champion. I was the division wrestling champion. My mortar crew, we were 2-time division mortar champions. My gun track had the highest rating of any vehicle in the 2nd Infantry Division. We went on Team Spirit. My vehicle broke down, and they had to cannibalize it as parts. And when we pulled in, we had less than 2 weeks before the division IG. And I told my crew, they made me an acting corporal. I got PFC, they made me an acting corporal in charge of my own gun track. I said, "We're going to get this thing up." I paid out of my own pocket for Odyssey to paint it the proper camouflage pattern. We ordered parts, and my crew, we worked on that thing. And so when it pulled out on its own power from the bay, the IG team came down. They said, "When you guys get a new track?" I said, "It's not a new track." And when they lowered the ramp, it looked like it came out of Detroit. Everything freshly paint, all the proper decals. And the inspector said, this is not a new vehicle." I said, "No." And you look at all other gun tracks, all beat up and stuff. "No, this is not." And he went to check the engine. He turned it on, and the engine light went out. That was the only gig they found on that track. The only gig. So when I left 2nd Infantry Division, 18 months, my first tour, I left there with a meritorious service medal. I didn't know what the MSM was. So here I am, a corporal, leaving there. So my next duty assignment was the 101st. Next duty assignment. So I get to the 101st, and little did I know I was going to be a part of history again. At that time, the 101st wore blue berets, the whole division, and they had a swagger to it. And you had to go to air assault school. I think it was within 2 weeks of being assigned to the unit, and they didn't play. I was assigned to 3rd Brigade, 3rd Brigade, the Rakkasans, but my battalion was second in the 503rd. Now, here I am with a kid on Okinawa serving the 503rd, 173rd Airborne Brigade with the 503rd Battalion stood up. Here I am serving in the 503rd. Because when they left Vietnam, they deactivated the 173rd, they deactivated at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and they kept the battalion, which was Alpha Company, Black Hawk, second in the 503rd, the same Alpha Company that was fought at the Battle of Dachau. And so here I am in this company. And I remember going to Air Assault School, and I remember Lieutenant Lombardo, our XO. He was a 173rd Airborne Brigade veteran. He fought at the Battle of at Dachau. And I remember going to Air Assault School. Air Assault School is nothing like it is now back then. It was physically demanding. One of the most people talk smack about the Air Assault School, but when we went to the field, we air assaulted out to the field, and we air assaulted back into the field, from the field. And I remember at that time we flew nothing but Hueys. And so to see a bunch of Hueys come in, we broke it down in the chalks, and it's like apocalypse now. It's like Vietnam, and because we still had the same equipment. But man, you talking about serving some great times in the field. The soldiers weren't smart, but we were motivated. Oh, we were motivated. And then I remember it was time for me. I said, hey, I got my paperwork and stuff, and so it was time for me to move on for Rangers. I remember we went to Panama, and I remember deploying to Panama for jungle training. We would get issued our OG 107s, and we had the old Vietnam rucksacks, and it was like Vietnam because we had the same equipment. And I remember I'd go to the jungle, and I fell in love with the jungle. In a JOTC, Jungle Operation Training Center at Fort Sherman, Panama. That's the most realistic, best jungle training the United States Army ever had. Why we gave up Fort Sherman, hell, I don't know. They got that jungle school out there in Hawaii. There ain't no flipping jungle school. That's a damn tropical paradise. It's not a jungle school. They call it a jungle school, but the real jungle school is you go down there like Honduras, you go down like Belize, you go down to Panama. That's jungle school. That is jungle school. And being able to go down there with the 101st doing the jungle school. So fast forward, I'm ready to make that leap to the Rangers. Made my E5. And back then, at the E5, you had the two Ranger battalions. Now, the Ranger battalion stood up in 1974 at Fort Benning, Georgia. And so the 1st Ranger Battalion stood up first. They had volunteers. They took some of the cadre from the Ranger Department. And so they went in and jumped in to Hunter Army Airfield, right? And it was bam, bam, bam. Then the 2nd Ranger Battalion, I think a couple of months later, they formed up and they jumped into Fort Lewis, Washington, right? So you had the 2 Ranger Battalions established, and we fell under the Joint Chiefs of Staffs at that time. So I'm going volunteer. And so then we didn't have, the only ones that had Ranger, not but pre-Ranger was the Ranger battalions. The 82nd Airborne, they had what they call a reconnaissance school, and the 101st Airborne Division, they had a 101st Air Assault Division, they had a reconnaissance schools. The reconnaissance schools were very good schools. Wish I had the opportunity to go to the reconnaissance school. Reconnaissance school, the derivative from the reconnaissance school, McPherson reconnaissance school they had in Vietnam, the Trang. And so they established the reconnaissance schools. 101st had a reconnaissance school, 82nd had the reconnaissance schools. Reconnaissance schools, a lot of alert rangers started from reconnaissance schools when they went to Vietnam, started up the alert rangers. A lot of them came from the reconnaissance school. I remember one of the first black rangers to conduct patrols as a ranger, his name was Icicle, right? He passed away, and I would speak to him, and he told me about his, time with the alert rangers. And you can look at some of the books, his name is mentioned, and I remember I know him really well. But so then you had to volunteer. You had to be a 2-term volunteer to go to the Ranger battalions. Number 1, you had to volunteer as airborne. You had to take the airborne PT test. Then number 2, you had to volunteer for Ranger School. You had to take the airborne PT test. Ranger School PT test. And so then you had what they call these prerequisites that you must be proficient in prior to attending Ranger School. That means prior to being in Ranger School, these are things that you should know. You should know how to navigate. You should know the colors of the map. You should be able to swim. You should be able to do this, X, Y, Z, so forth. So when your commander signs off on that documentation, to let them know that you are qualified to go to this course. Because at that time, only the ones who went to the Ranger School with a lot of officers, and you had NCOs go through Ranger School too, but it was such a selected group because the units didn't want to pay for it. And it was very, very different than the Ranger School it is now. And so I went, and I remember Lieutenant Lowe, he said, hey, you know, boom, 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 and gave me a little advice. But the day one in Ranger School is you get there, we're running inside the building, hollering and screaming, all motivated. And when a Ranger instructor come in and said, shut the F up, shut the F up. And you hear a cold chill go down your back. He said, you better save that crap for later on in the course because you're going to flip and need it. That's if you flipping and graduate. And right then I said, damn, what are these guys cut ourselves into? So the first week, you faced a Morgan team. We may start off with a class maybe around 250 people, 300. And so the Morgan team would have to call the herd. So within 1 week, you will know if you would have wanted to be a Ranger. Didn't cut a snow slack. It was, the runs were crazy. They PT'd us to death, the worm pit. And people start dropping out left and right. And if you get arms linked out, they snatch you on that truck. And you go back, you go to the gig pit. And then I met legends there like Schwackhammer, Sergeant Schwackhammer, George Ponder. These were my Ranger instructors, are good friends of mine to this day. And these guys, they did because of Willie Brown. These guys are legends. And these guys were my Ranger instructors. These guys are Vietnam veterans, Willie Brown Silver Star recipient. And so these guys, they knew that they didn't cut us no slack. You don't go up there crying like some damn wussy. You know, you get joked out. And then it was just unbelievable. And so I made it through Ranger school, right? First time go. I didn't go through no pre-Ranger and all that stuff. And they said, Max, how did you go through? First time go. Easy. I did what the Ranger instructor said. I didn't try to force my stuff that I learned from my other units. And I tell people that, what's the key to Ranger school? I said, you do what you're taught. And so, for instance, the Ranger instructor said, this is how we want you to cross the linear danger area. Now, there's 50 million ways you can cross the linear danger area, but this is how we want you to cross it. Why is that? Because everybody be on the same sheet of music, so when they get in a greater position, they'll be able to make it happen. You'll be able to make it happen. So you just follow, keep from getting injured, right? Don't be a blue falcon. You know, don't screw your buddy over. In your leadership position, you make it happen. When you're not in leadership position, you give support. And that's what I did. And there were times I wanted to quit. And people said, heck yeah. I mean, it crosses your mind every day, but you take Ranger school a day at a time. And I remember my Ranger buddy, he's a Ranger legend. His name is Mike Kelso. Mike Kelso's in the Ranger Hall of Fame. He's in the Ranger Hall of Fame. He's also won the Doughboy recipient, which is the highest order of the Order of St. Maurice. He is a legend. Mike Kelso fought with the Rhodesian Army, the Soviet scouts during the Rhodesian War. He got around 5 or 6 combat jumps with the Rhodesian Army. He came back, it was in the 82nd Airborne. He came back, joined the Rangers. So me and him were Ranger buddies, you know, going through Ranger school, and we assigned to the 1st Ranger Battalion together. But so I graduated Ranger school, the hardest thing I ever done in my life at that time. Hardest thing. Remember many times I wanted to, it crossed my mind to quit, but you just keep pushing. You keep pushing. But I made it through. So then I was supposed to start. So they sent me, I went back to 1st Ranger Battalion, but what's crazy is I went to airborne school and they put me on the bus to go to Hunter. And I got there, I said, hey, look, I'm supposed to start Ranger school next week. So they said, no, you're going to go through pre-Ranger. And so I said, no. So I remember the guy said, you know what? Now we got to waste a goddamn slot because I said, look, my order said I got to start. So they sent me back. So that's when my Ranger experience at school started. So when I got back to 1st Bat, I showed them that tab. I got mine. And so being a NCO, like you go into the Ranger Battalion, you're like an outsider. You know, you got to basically prove yourself, you know, plus being a black man, it's not even easier. And So you had that extra stress on you. But people talk about racism. They say, you ever face racism in the Ranger Battalion, the regiment? I said, yeah. I faced racism everywhere I went, in the Ranger Battalions, in the Ranger Regiment, everywhere. But you know what? I had a choice. I can become a victim, cry about it, complain about it. Oh, they did me this, did me that. Or I can step up and I can show who I am. And the Bible says you reap coals of kindness on the enemy's head. So I dealt with it on an individual basis. I didn't put a blanket over everything. You deal with those individual people on an individual basis. Now, what happens is it comes back. A lot of people come back. You reap coals of kindness on the enemy said. They said, man, you know what? I'm so sorry the way I treated you. You know what I tell them? Man, we were kids. Don't even worry about that. You can't change the past. Let's move forward. That's how you dealt with it. But my service in the 1st Ranger Battalion was absolutely extraordinary. I was there. I remember when Delta was basically just formed up. I remember Charlie Beckwith would come down to the auditorium, ask for volunteers for Rangers. I remember Desert One. I remember being part of history when we first started doing airfield sieges and all these things. Now, I remember in our 1st Ranger Battalion, we would go to the field. We jumped every time we go to the field, we jumped in. It was not uncommon for a young soldier going from Ranger Doctoration program going to the battalion to have around 15 to 20 jumps already. I said, damn, as a private? Yeah, because we had to jump. We had to, because you had to be proficient in airborne operations. And the way you get proficient is you got to constantly jump. I probably can jump the time I've been in 1st Bat on one hand the number of times they did the day jump. Everything was night, mass, tactical jump. What you do in training, you will do in combat. So there's so much more 1st Bat. Then I went back to Korea, right? Abrams Charter. Went back to Korea, and at that time I served up on a DMZ. I met a legend. Little I know, I'm going to meet some more legends, right? I met at the time, 2nd Division was starting what they call a designated marksmanship program, with each battalion will have a sniper section assigned to them, right? And it'd be like the scouts for the battalion. So they picked me because I was wearing a Ranger tab. When I got there, I was like a #1 draft choice. You know, a young sergeant, E5 with a damn Ranger tab, bro, everybody and their mother wanted me. And so they picked me to help start up our sniper section. And they had the SF detachment Yongsan, the special forces down in Yongsan. They were part of the 1st group, but they were assigned to Yongsan, Korea garrison. They came up there to put an MTT on for us. And I met my first SOG legend, Sergeant 1st Class Melvin McIntyre. He's a SOG legend. And I remember talking to him. We're there, we talk at nighttime, and we tell him about the SOG missions. He'd give me tips of the trade. I write this stuff down, still got the notes. And he was grooming me, and I would try and mirror my sniper section off what Sergeant McIntyre taught me. And McIntyre is an extraordinary man. When he was talking, felt like I was there with him on those recon missions. Felt like I was there. And so when I got back, I established my sniper section based off like a recon team. And I remember we would go down there, and I was able to go down there and coordinate with my own aircraft. And we would do insertions, false insertions, and we'd do recons. We were doing this stuff way before anybody else was doing over there in Korea, my section, because my commanders gave me the flexibility. And then we served up on, we were attached to the 117th Infantry, and I served up on the DMZ in Korea. Right, that's where with the real McCoy, we conducted combat operations, patrolling in the DMZ. When you cross MGM River, bro, it was on. It was for real. You had Garpos Collier and Garpos Olet. I stayed on Garpos Collier. I stayed there for a whole month. I didn't want to come down. And you had to rake the sand. It's like you're in the bunkers, and you peer in the North Korea propaganda village every day. I saw the North Koreans working. I remember at nighttime, you hear explosions, muffled explosions. You had to get a general azimuth direction because they were tunneling. I remember the propaganda speakers going back and forth. We had to worry about the snipers. The infiltrators, SPAR come in, 100% alert. I remember setting up ambush positions, and then getting awarded the MGM Scout. We no longer had that mission. And so I did my time there. And again, I did some extraordinary things. My second tour, NCO of the month, gazillion times. We did extraordinary things, building up. And then I went to left Korea, went to 2nd Ranger Battalion. 2nd Ranger Battalion, met some more. Man, I met some legends, man. Little I know these guys become legends. Greg Birch, one of the first people I meet. Greg Birch became the regiment sergeant major for the 75th Ranger Regiment. He's also the Delta Force legend. I think 14 years CAG. He received, I think, the Silver Star at Hadat Bridge, Hadat Dam. Guy, he literally transformed the 75th Regiment into what it is today. We were good friends. Another friend, John Macionis. You probably read about John Macionis in the book Black Hawk Down. He's the Delta Force legend. He's the one who came back, changed his civilian clothes, went back out looking for Durant. This guy's like a brother to me. And I remember we went to Grenada. I did the combat jump into Grenada. On my aircraft was Ken Bachman. King Bachman is another Ranger Hall of Fame. We served the 1st and 2nd Ranger Battalion together. Here we are on the aircraft, going into Grenada, 500 feet jump, being part of this history. And we're jumping weapons exposed. We didn't have reserves on the aircraft when we jumped in. We jumped into 500 feet with no reserves. And I remember seeing Ian Coffle coming out, another SF legend. And so to serve with these guys, we did Grenada, came back, went back to the 101st, served there for a brief stint, had opportunity to mentor a lot of the guys in my platoon, went on to the 7th Ranger Regiment. One retired. First Sergeant Martin retired as the first sergeant of the regiment. I was a platoon sergeant. a squad leader. And so it shows you how you want to build people up. And then that's when my stint as a Ranger instructor started, when I left there. And to be a part of the Morgan team that made me, to mentor me, to see the transition. And I remember as a Ranger instructor, this is where the legend of Mad Max started. I treated Ranger the way I was treated. I mean, no slack, cussed out and so forth like that. And because that's all I knew. And so, but when you start reading the after course critiques, Sergeant Mullen, one of the worst Ranger instructors, all he did was cusses, all I did was smokers, all he did was hazes. You know, you laugh at it, yeah, whatever. But then after a while, it starts affecting you. You say, damn, here I am in a position, these future leaders, these future platoon sergeants, these future commanders, these future generals, you know, is this how they see me? So I had to change my style of leadership. So I became a coach, mentor, and motivator. I gave Ranger all the opportunities, all the tools to be successful to pass the patrol. I didn't cut no slack. And then it starts changing. Then you started meeting foreign soldiers. I remember you start using wisdom. The Bible said wisdom winneth souls. And back then, if you get a go, yeah, we get these allied Rangers in, you know, they can't hack, poof, flunk. So I remember we had this one. His name was Captain Kim. He was ROC Special Forces, right? He's a ROC scuba instructor, ROC Halo instructor, and he was charged of a ROC Special Forces Halo scuba team. He was coming through. He didn't speak very good English, right? And I remember we're doing what we call the ditch and don, right? You jump into the water, you move your equipment, all breaking the water, you come through the stop, right? You get to go. But he kept floating back up because he kept getting an air pocket. So he flunked it 2 times, right? He stood there, and I told my fellow Ranger instructor, I said, put him back in. He said, hell no, Max. He didn't meet the standard. He flunked, man. He flunked it 2 times. I said, look, there's a language barrier. I said, put him back in. No, hey, hell no. I said, look, this guy is a ROC Halo instructor, ROC scuba instructor. This dude is a Korean Aquaman in the water. He will swim circles around me and you. He'll drown us, and resuscitate us, and drown us again, and resuscitate us again, and pull us out of the water. I said, put him back in. Put him back in. He went through the course. He graduated. And I would call down to my Ranger buddies and I said, man, he's that Captain Kim, man, this dude's like a tiger in the woods. So I remember Captain Kim, he graduated. He came to my barracks, knocked on the door. In a barracks, cadre barracks, said, Ranger Kim, you're not supposed to be there. He had his ROC, camis on, his ROC Special Forces beret on. And he said, Sergeant Mullen, I want to thank you. I said, for what? He said, for what you did. I said, look, I saw the potential in you. I didn't do anything. You the one that did all the legwork. So he gave me this towel with all the ROC Special Forces patches on. He said, I want you to have this. Then he gave me his Rock Special Forces beret, and I gave my Ranger beret. And I will never forget that. And he eventually became, I think he became the Rock Chief of Staff for the Rock Army. And then there's Ranger Muhammad. Ranger Muhammad came through Ranger School, and he was from Nigeria. Muhammad Mustafas, he's from Nigeria. And he came knocking through my barracks doors, right? And I said, Ranger Muhammad, what the hell are you doing? This cadre barracks off limits. And besides, why are you not in uniform? And he said, Sergeant Mullen, they're sending me back. I said, for what? You flunked? He said, yeah, I flunked the M60 machine gun. I said, I'm sorry, Mom, I can't. Dude, you flunked it. He said, Sergeant Mullen, I cannot go back. I said, what do you mean you can't go back, Muhammad? He said, I am the President's to Nigeria personal bodyguard. He said, I'm the first one to go through Ranger School since our President graduated Ranger School in 1968. He said, I was trained by the British SAS to be his bodyguard. He said, we use British weapons. He said, I was personally chosen to come to Ranger School to be the first NCOIC went through. He said, the whole Nigerian army pinning their hopes on me. I said, Muhammad, follow me. Went to the taxi shed, and I said, hey, what's the deal with Muhammad? He said, hey, Max, hey, you flunked M60. I said, is there any way we can put him back in the course? He said, no, he flunked. I said, look, put him back in. He said, Max, he didn't mean to stand. I said, put him back in. Then I explained to him, I said, this guy, give him a chance. They work with British weapons. If you would go to Nigerian equivalent commando school and they gave you M240G, this before we were assigned to M240Gs, would you know what to do? He said, yeah, well, you got the point. He said, I'm going to put him back in, but it's on you. I said, I take full responsibility, anything that happened. Muhammad got back into the course. He graduated Ranger School. He said, thank you, Sergeant Mullen. I said, no, you did it. I just made sure that they had a fair chance. Fast forward 2 months later, I get a phone call. It's Ranger Muhammad calling me from the presidential palace in Nigeria. Hear all this ruckus and everything going on. I said, Muhammad, how'd you get my number? He said, look, I work for the president. We have our intelligence too. He said, the president of Nigeria wants to meet you. I said, for what? He said, for helping me. I said, I didn't help you. You did all your own. He said, besides, I can't just hop on a plane and fly to Nigeria to meet the president. You got to go through the State Department. I mean, you got to go to the embassy. There's a diplomatic process. And so he said, hey, I'll have some friends who want to talk to you. I spoke to the Nigerian Army Chief of Staff. I mean, everybody. You need to come to Nigeria. But it never came to be. And but I stayed in touch with Muhammad, but I heard he got killed in a suspicious plane crash a couple of years ago. But that shows you how, if you see something, you got to use judgment and wisdom. It just can't be the hammer thing like that. But because you're the leader. So then I left there. I was assigned to the 3rd Ranger Battalion, right? And I was given an opportunity by First Sergeant Ralph Beam. He is a Ranger Hall of Fame. He also a Ranger Legend. Crazy thing about it, I put Ralph Beam through Ranger School when he was a sergeant first class. I was his Ranger instructor, and here he is becoming my first sergeant. So he asked me, I got a platoon for you, Max. I said, hell yeah, I'll take it. Mm-hmm. So I get there, and Ranger's going to try you. Beam told me, he said, hey, look, I had to remove the old platoon sergeant. I said, well, what was the deal? Well, he just couldn't hack it, because people have to realize that you can be a really good NCO in the regular army. You can be top level, but you get to the Ranger Regiment, it's a whole different ball game. You with some straight up alphas, you with some straight up hammers, sharks, some gorillas, silverbacks. You in there, bruh, they don't play. If they see a chink in your armor, they see weakness, bruh, you're gone. You lose all respect. So I'll go in there, know they're going to try me. Even though I put half these punks in Ranger School, I know they're going to try me. So I went there, and I said, look, who's the senior, who's acting platoon sergeant? Young, he said. And so I got the whole platoon together. I said, look, I just want to tell you guys, it's an honor to be here. There's a lot about you. The platoon leader was all excited. Oh, you were my Ranger sergeant? Yeah. So I talked to the platoon leader. I said, look, we have our different lanes. You let me run this platoon. When we get to the field, I'll make you shine. I said, okay. Got the platoon together. Said, look, I don't know everything. I'm going to depend on you guys to speed me up on these SOPs. So I'm going to depend on you. So if I come around asking questions, I'm not out there to sharpshoot you. I'm not out there to make you look bad. I'm asking you because I don't know. And I need you to help me. Yeah, sure thing, Sergeant. I got every one of my privates, brought them in there one-on-one, and I asked them, what you want to do with your life? What you want to be? Same thing that General Grange did me. I want to do this, that, and this, and that. I said, no, we're going to help you attain your goal. Yeah. And so I knew every one of my privates, I knew their family situation. I knew their children, their wives, I knew their birthdays, everything. I said, how are things at home? He said, things are good. Why did I do that? Because when I was at the 101st, I was a hammer. He had this guy named PFC Payne. He come there like a dirtbag every day, and I used to smoke him, right? Want to get him kicked out. Until the first sergeant said, hey, y'all need to go do a health and welfare check on Payne. Went over to Payne. He was living in a filthy trailer, filthy. Young wife, a child. And I said, damn, I felt that small because I didn't know that man's situation. Because he needed help, didn't know how to call for help. Valuable lesson. So from that lesson right there, so when I got that platoon, I got the whole platoon together on that last day. I said, let me tell you something. I said, if any of you guys, even the lowest private, got something better and it can work, hey, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. And I said, I'm going to give you guys free reign. You run your squads. I said, I don't care how you do it. Like Al Davis used to say, I don't care how you do it. Just win, baby, win. I don't care how you do it as long as nobody gets killed, nobody lose their sight, nobody lose limb. I don't care how you do it. I just want us to, when I let the leash off, man, they were animals. Everybody wanted to come to my platoon. We had the highest EIB recipients. We had 17 in my platoon. We had the highest PT average. We deployed to Korea. We destroyed the Vardy talk, division talk. We destroyed everything. We had the highest kill ratio of in the entire battalion when we were doing the mile stuff on our train up. We had 110 guys in around a 6-month period. We probably lost only 3 guys doing the miles thing. And why? Because we just made it happen. We made it happen. We were the main effort on everything. Why? Because leadership things that I learned as the people who affected my life made me to the platoon sergeant became. And I tell you, it was an extraordinary career. I didn't have a chance to fight during the GWAT. I retired in 2002. And I remember I was at Forces Command, and I was briefing the general, the CG, General, it's going to come to me, but he was the division commander. Matter of fact, he was the Battle of Dak To. I'm sitting there briefing him, and we saw the first aircraft hit the World Trade Center. And then we saw the second aircraft hit. And we said, this ain't no incident. And right there, it just changed overnight. Right there, it changed. But it's been a fun, extraordinary career. A lot of fun. And I had to see the things that people I served with is absolutely unbelievable. So that's the Chronicles of One Mad Max, just a small part of it.
Say, as many people have been putting in the show notes over here saying, my God, what a career. And this is what a leader looks like, folks. A lot of great comments. I mean, just to add on to the fact that your platoon not only had the highest EIBs, which, guys, that is on top of a CIB, having the EIB is,
Yes.
It's yeah, absolutely. Google it. And for Mr. Max to have one and his CIB, and he wears his EIB more prominently, so that should let you know how highly respected and how sought after the EIB badge is. It's not just being in combat. You've got to know book details as well as how to conduct yourself in the field. Look it up. It is a very, and for his group to have the highest, and not only if I've got this correct right here, the most Ranger School graduates as well in your period of time came from your platoon as well.
Right. And the reason for that is that the first we have 3 Ranger School slots available. Who wants them? And remember, we're getting ready to deploy. We're getting ready to go on deployment. And so the platoon sergeant said, "Look, I can't right now. We need everybody." I said, "I'll take all 3." And first sergeant said, "You sure?" I said, "You know we're getting ready to deploy." I said, "Hey, I don't care." I said, "We'll make our adjustments because if we go to war, take casualties, guess what? We're going to have to make our adjustments, and the mission's going to drive on."
I mean, that's amazing in itself. And then you mentioned the exercise y'all did where y'all just completely obliterated the 2nd Infantry Division and their makeshift TOC, their vehicles, and stuff like that. While y'all were at in Korea, weren't y'all? I believe y'all were up on the DMZ for around 30 or so days straight without coming off the line, if I remember reading correctly.
That was when I was assigned to the 2nd Infantry Division, when I had my sniper section.
Okay. And what were y'all actually out there lined up on real? I mean, if it was to go loud, so to speak, y'all were ready to rock and roll with the sniper division set up?
Yeah, well, we had at the time we had 2 guard posts, right? They were bunkered in positions and stuff. They had you had a cook up there, so it's a bunker position. It's in bunkers, right? And you also had Warrior Base that was back. That was the main base camp. And so the guard posts were manned. And so my sniper section, we stayed up there and manned the guard post, into the towers, looking into North Korea, writing down any suspicious activity and things like that, calling in, while they would do patrols in the DMZ, right, from Warrior Base.
Did y'all, I mean, I know here in the recent years we've had guys defect and some shootouts and some in the past there was a brutal murder that happened with the axes. They came after a soldier and brutally murdered him. But did y'all have any run-ins up there on the DMZ with the Koreans or?
Well, that was Operation Paul Bunyan, and I was in basic training when that happened. That happened back in 70. It happened in 75. Happened around the summer of 75. Matter of fact, there was still kind of a little tension going on when I was up there, and so that happened. Yeah, Operation Paul Bunyan happened. That's the closest we came to war with the Koreans, right? And so, but when I did get back on there was an incident happened with PFC White, right? He was a soldier that defected. He was a 131st or 31st Barricade. He defected into North Korea. I'll never forget that. He defected into North Korea. And so we went to full alert because we thought he was kidnapped. And a couple of days later, they have his equipment laid out and showed him with pictures of flowers and stuff where he involuntarily went over there. And so I remember I had the propaganda leaflet they dropped of him. But he eventually died. He stayed there, never made it back. They found his body floating in Jim River, I heard.
God, I mean, that shows you the North Koreans are treacherous people. I've been recently listening to some podcasts about some of the spies they've tried to send to South Korea and their assassination, and just terrible people.
Well, the big assassination was back in 1968. It was called the infamous Blue House Raid. That's where a 33-man North Korean commando outfit, while their mission was to infiltrate into South Korea, kill President Park Chung-hee, and chop his head off and put it up for display. And so on that mission, what they did, they picked North Korean commandos who lived prior to the war in the provinces down there, because you may speak Korean, but there's a dialect. It's like you got a northern dialect, southern dialect, so they'll know, right? Like if you go to Jeju Island, you speak Korean, certain words, they can tell you from the mainland. And so these guys infiltrated through, and cold wintertime, and these guys were, their condition was that on the level of Olympians, right? They said these guys look like They did autopsies on them. They looked like miniature Arnold Schwarzeneggers. These guys were beasts. And the reason they couldn't catch those guys, the reason they got caught is they got compromised. They found some woodcutters. And so they caught the woodcutters. Same thing that happened in Operation Red Wing. Exact same thing. They captured these woodcutters, and so they got debating. Are we going to let these guys go, or are we going to kill them? But the leader of that 33 command said, okay, we're going to indoctrinate these guys. So they sat there for a couple of hours and told them about the great things of the great leader, Kim Il-sung, blah, blah, blah. Then they released them. Those guys boogied down there to the Rock police station. Then it was on. They were compromised. But they were always a step ahead because you know why? These guys double timed. And if you take a look at that terrain in Korea, it's absolutely insane. These guys double timed, and they're always a step ahead. So when they got to the part where they could see into the lights of South Korea, they knew they lied to because everything was lit up. So they changed their clothes. They got to their right uniforms. They went down there and they marched in formation, full alert. And the only reason I think there's something like a couple hundred meters from the Blue House. This rock captain, right, in the Jeep saw him and asked him some questions, right? He said something wasn't right about him. And all of a sudden they threw a grenade onto a bus blew up, killed some people there with a big old shootout, and they just scattered to the four winds. They scattered. They were no more than 200 meters from their objective. And so they hunted these guys down over the course of around 2 or 3 weeks, hunted them down. Some of these guys committed suicide, blew themselves up. They caught them, they killed them. And one of them made it back across the border. One made it back. But I did a story called Operation Blue, about the Blue House raid, but I was talking about the physical condition of the North Korean commandos, right? I did a story, so I formulated a story based off information I would receive and what I would do if I was North Korean. I took a look at the map and so forth, their routes and so forth, right? And so, matter of fact, I see an issue of that. And so what happened, I was contacted around 8 years ago, and this guy said, did you write that story about the North Korean command? I said, yeah. I said, that's damn good. I said, thank you. He said, how'd you get the information? I said, well, I did the blah, blah, blah. He said, man, that was like, dude, I thought, he said, I was in charge. I was the S2 for the 2nd Infantry Division. He said, as S2 intel, the rots were not allowed to touch the bodies until I got there. So I took pictures of those dead North Koreans. So he sent me those pictures. I got pictures never before seen of those dead North Koreans. And so one of the North Koreans, he gave up. He didn't want to die. So they kept this guy. They interrogated him. I forgot his name. They interrogated him for a year, got all the information out of him. They killed his family. So they got the information from him, and they let him go. Yeah, you can do what you want. He became a minister, a pastor down in South Korea. Famous minister, big time anti-communist. And I wanted to do a story. I was trying to get an interview. So I had a Korean friend that contacted him. She contacted him, and he said he didn't want to talk about experience. He said, look, sir, I just want to talk about the conditioning, the mindset, the mentality of the North, what made you guys, strictly from the soldier point of view. He said, I didn't want to talk about it. But I still got a whole bunch of notes never before seen of the training that these guys did and so forth. And it's the same thing like you go to, like for instance, I tell people you visualize what you want to do and you stick to it. When I was with a Ranger Instructor, right, at the RTB, remember I kept telling you, I said, man, I read about the 101st. They did the combat jump, right? I did the combat jump. I got that knocked out, right? And then I remember reading the book about the Dien Bien Phu. That's the French Indochina War. Dien Bien Phu. And I remember the general, I think this colonel, right? He was standing on his bunk. He had the French jump wings on. I said, man, I want the French jump wings. And so as a Ranger Instructor, I went over there to the French liaison's office at Building 4, and I told the French liaison's office, hey, what are the possibilities of doing a jump exchange with French airmen? Oh, monsieur, that's a good idea. And so from my initiative, I got an S3 talking. So we went from Fort Benning, flew all the way there to Lyon, to France, went through the French Airborne School, right? I got my French jump wings. That's checked off. But it gets better. We happen to be there during the anniversary of the D-Day invasion.
Ah.
So we go there, and this is before it really became popular with the units going over there. So we go there, and we stayed at St. Mary-Église. If you remember the movie Longest Day, St. Mary-Église and so forth, right? So we went there to St. Mary-Église, and we stayed in the schoolhouse, right? They hosted the school. We had some guys from 82nd Airborne with us too. And so that tower that Red Buttons was hanging from, that tower has a dummy there and a parachute year round. So I took pictures of that. So the square where all that shooting take place, right? So me being the person that I am, I like to explore. So I'm going down this little alleyway, right? And I see this brass plaque like PFC so-and-so 82nd Airborne died in this spot. And so this lady comes out and she sees me, and she had this white silk in her hand. She kept pointing, Sky Soldier. So she gave me a piece of silk that one of the soldiers from the 82nd Airborne jumped into. Okay. And so then they hosted us for around 3 or 4 days, a big celebration. You think the war just ended yesterday. Had all this rare stuff, a French family, they hosted us and stuff, with the French family. And so we did some jump. They had what they call, it was a drop zone, St. Mary-Église drop zone outside the city of St. Mary-Église. That was supposed to be the primary insertion point for 82nd. So I wanted to jump match, so we jump in. And so I'm walking off the field with a Hollywood jump, that means no combat equipment. And I saw these 3 guys standing there. And so I run up to him, I recognize the guy, big burly man. He had a French Legionnaire beret on, and he had the French jump wings with medals, ribbons disappearing over his shoulder. And big guy, but old too. And I said, were you a Legionnaire? And I think with his nephew, spoke pretty good English. He said, yes, this is my uncle. He fought at Dien Bien Phu. Oh. He jumped into Dien Bien Phu, and he was held by the Vietnamese for around 3 years, Viet Minh. I spoke to that guy. I shook his hand and said, sir. And so that right there was knocked out. But so then we went to Pointe du Hoc. Right.
Oh yeah.
So Pointe du Hoc, they have Pointe du Hoc drop zone, right? It wasn't an actual drop zone. We jumped into Pointe du Hoc, and so then we go to Pointe du Hoc where the Rangers scaled up and stuff, right? So I'll go into that big bunker. If you remember the movie Longest Day, remember the German looks out at the bunker and he turns around and see all the Allied ship. So I was in that bunker, and I took a big chip out of that bunker. So I'm looking. I said, man, I saw this on Longest Day. And so then we're driving around, and so we're there, and so we get on the bus and we go to Pegasus Bridge. If you remember the movie Longest Day, Pegasus Bridge, that's when the British gliders landed. And so we get there, and so we're walking around Pegasus Bridge, and so this is like this little building off to the side. So I'll walk over to that building, I walk inside, and I see all this French and airborne memorabilia, and I see this old man sitting there in the corner. So I walked up to him. I said, "Hey, sir, were you one of the British Paras?" He said, "Yes." I said, "What's your name?" He said, "My name is Major John Howard." Oh. I was the leader of the raid into Pegasus Bridge. And I said, "Can I sit with you, sir?" He said, "Yes, mate, sit here." I said, "Hey, we're here for the anniversary." He said, "Can you come out here and talk to us about the raid?" He said, "I'd be happy to." So Major John Hurd came out there, got us around. Said, "Hey guys, Major Hurd was in charge of this raid here on Pegasus Bridge. He gave and took us point to point where each glider landed, where each man landed, boom, 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 boom. And this man, he gave us a OPD right there. OPD.
I mean, viewers, I don't know if y'all understand the significance of that, but that would be like getting Michael Jordan to sit down and talk to you about the game to where he had the flu and gave you point by point how he won that championship. To put it in layman's terms, I mean that I can't imagine you walking into all of this and happen upon the man who happened to lead the raid. And you keep mentioning the movie. That is one of the best WW2. Even for back in its day, it was so good, so accurate, action. I can't imagine what that must have been like for you getting it right from the man himself that the movie was based upon.
But check this out. So we're there at St. Medicles, had a big festival. So it was this German guy. They had a modern day German beret on, and they were treating him rude. I said, what's going on? So I walk over to him. I said, people, you could tell the way it was treating him. I said, why are they treating you rude? He said, well, it's because of the war. I said, how old are you? He told me his age, and he said, yeah, I was a German Fallschirmjäger. I jumped in the creek. I said, you jumped in the creek? He said, yeah, I jumped in the creek. That was the last big major airborne operation we did after Crete. We lost a lot of guys there. So he told me about his battle at Crete. And he said, here, I want to give you my beret. So he gave me his beret. He jumped in the Crete. Those that don't know what the Battle of Crete is, you look it up. And so then fast forward a couple years later, I said, man, I want to get my Fallschirmjäger. I want to get my German jump lead. So I went up there to the German liaisons, coordinate, what is the possibility of going over doing? Yeah, I think it's a good idea. So coordinated where we went over there to Germany, and we were hosted by the International Alertion Corps, the Germans. So we go over there. And so we do a jump exchange with the German airborne, right? We jump master those guys, do 5 jumps. So we did a wing exchange. So what's even crazy is that, so we go on there and we go to one of their airborne buildings, right? Their airborne schools where they served at. And so I'm talking to one of the young captains. I said, hey, won't you show us your airborne history? He said, well, we don't talk about that. I said, why? He said, well, it's the Nazi party. You just don't, they don't like to talk about that. I said, come on, you guys pioneered airborne. I said, well, I'll show you something, but you just can't tell anybody. He said, okay. So I said, can I get a friend to come? He said, yeah, sure. So I got this captain come with me, right? And so we go to this building. It's like an insignificant old warehouse building. Look at it. Had a padlock on it. He looks around, opens up. Said, come on in. We walk in, and he closed the door real quick. Said, wow, that's it, man. We don't understand. He flipped the light on. And my mouth just dropped. All this World War II memorabilia, maps, uniform, field marshal baton, rare photos on the Eastern Front. Just I spent around an hour and a half in there. We weren't allowed to take pictures because we didn't have cell phone cameras and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But I spent around an hour and a half just looking at all that documentation, maps, photos, front, pictures never before seen. And so then, while we're still there, we saw this bunch of old some Nazis, right? My friend named Randolph, he was a German, born German citizen, stuff like that, but he joined the American Army. He was one of the Ranger instructors. So I said, hey, let's talk to these guys. You don't want to talk to those Nazis. He said, yeah, I want to talk to them. So I went over there, and they gave it a look like, yeah, Schweitzer. So I said, tell them, hey, I'm not talking about Nazi party stuff like that, but you tell them that I admire their fighting tenacity on the Eastern Front against the Russians. I mean, the spirit of a warrior, soldier. I heard about
you have to.
You guys are beasts, and they were shocked, right? I was telling about their battles and stuff and everything. They're like Kharkov and all this. Whoa. And so they opened up to me. They sat down. They told me about their experience as a Fallschirmjäger on the front, and then I had this old German World War II recruiting poster. They signed it.
Oh.
And so here I am. I got my German wings, which I should read about. I saw the places that I wanted to visit. I met some extraordinary peoples. But one of the really big things that really affected me was I was really big into wrestling in high school. And I remember the 1970, I want to say it was the 70 Montreal, Canada Olympics. I think it was 75, Montreal. Anyway, they had this Korean wrestler named was Yang Jung Mo. When was I think it was named Yang Jung Mo. But the Montreal Olympics, what year was that? 76, 75? I believe it was 76. 76 Montreal Olympics. I was a really big wrestling fan, right? And I remember this guy named Yang Jung Mo. He represented Korea and he wrestling for the gold medal. He wrestled a guy named Gene Davis, who was on the American Olympic team, smoked him with his fireman carry. I said, man, I want to learn how to do that fireman. I was really big in wrestling. I could have went a long way if I was stuck with wrestling. But unfortunately, events happen. So I'll go to Korea my first tour trying to find this man because I want to just meet him and just wrestle him, tell him how much of influence on him, right? On my first 2 tours, I couldn't find him. And yeah, right there. And so what happens is they have the 1986 Olympics here in Atlanta, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Korean Olympic team was down at Fort Benning training with the All-Army Wrestling team because during that time they had the World Championships. Everything was going on in Atlanta for the buildup of the for the Olympics in Atlanta. So I was down there because I remember Randy Couture, he was on the All-Army Wrestling team, rolled with him for a bit. Yeah, so these guys, right? I know them all. So they had the Olympic Greco-Roman wrestling team there training. And so one of the wrestling coaches said, hey, Young Jung Mo was my hero. I said, man, this guy, but I tried to find him. I wanted to go train under him and stuff, but it was so hard to find him due to, you didn't have social media, you didn't have Google and all that stuff, right? And I said, man, that guy, he was my Michael Jordan. I said, man, this guy, he was my Michael Jordan. I have a picture of him. I had that thing framed of him doing that fireman carries on Gene Davis. And he said, Young Jung Mo's here. I said, no way. He said, yeah, he's here. I said, please tell him to come here. So Young Jung, he comes over, old frail man. And I said, please translate for me. I said, can you tell Young Jung Mo that he's my hero? Tell him that he is my equivalent to Michael Jordan. And that when I was in school, I tried to emulate his moves. I tried to find everything I can on him, microfiche, magazines, everything, but it's hard to find information. I did 2 tours in Korea, and each time I went there, I tried to find, but every time nobody didn't know. And you were my idol. I mean, you were my idol. And I know it seems strange to you that you, a Korean, on the far side of the world, has such an impact and influence on some little skinny black kid from Zion, Illinois. But I'm here to tell you, man, my dreams come true. I had a chance to meet my hero. That man started crying.
Wow.
He started crying, and he said, he never heard anything like that. I said, yeah, Young Jung, you're my hero. And so he gave me this coin. It was a 10,000 won coin because he considered a national treasure. He said, I want you to have this. And he said, if you ever come to Korea, Max, you have a place to stay. And you can train at my school with my champions anytime. And that was back in 86. So the story from that is people talk about all this racism about with the Koreans, the Koreans and stuff like that, all this racial stuff with the Asian. I said, this man was my hero. He was my hero. And this man treated me with dignity and respect. And I hope one day, if he's still alive, to go back over there to Korea and meet this man and tell people, it was no black athlete or white athlete that was my hero. It was Young Jung Mo, a Korean man.
That's that's usually what comes up with men post Vietnam and Vietnam is people asking about the racism dealt with either in the Ranger and the Special Forces community. And I always tell people, once you get the tab and you're accepted into the fold, it doesn't matter what creed, color, religion, whatever, you're a brother in blood and bond, and it doesn't matter what you do. That's the way it is when you become a member of one of these elite communities like yourself. I had a piggyback because this will lead to 2 questions. One from a viewer, and then also maybe speaking about one of the SOG men that you also knew. But Daniel was curious about, with all your experience with the Rangers, was there any particular reason you decided to stick it out with the Rangers, or did you ever think of going SF, considering all the men you knew and all the skills you have picked up, or what was your thought about ever going Special Forces?
It's all about timing. And at that time, when I wanted to go SF, I was assigned first class, and it was no way I couldn't do it, because once I made assigned first class, it was out of the window. It couldn't happen. It's all about timings. And so that would happen. See, I was like 11 Charlie, and 11 Charlie only has so many slots before you can make a certain rank. And so I wanted to stay 11 Charlie. So at the last minute, I went 11 Bravo. And as soon as I went 11 Bravo straight infantry, I made the list like that quick because of the points. And so by the time I wanted to go SF, it was just too little too late. It's all about timing.
See that, and it seems like you, to be quite honest, you were right where you needed to be, quite frankly.
Yeah, I have no regrets. See, one thing I love about Rangers is your direct action. I
Mm.
mean, you go there, when Rangers go, we need to deploy, people are going to die. It's none of this, win the hearts and minds. It's not trained up these people to be fighters. It's to go out there to straight up kill.
Absolutely, and I'm reading a little bit on the history of the UDT creation, and it's getting into also the history of the Rangers and the Raiders during WW2, and it's been quite interesting reading about their historic history, so to speak. Just outstanding. Jason's curious, considering in the modern era, guys started getting bigger. And we'll actually talk about that, considering you've actually got an action figure on yourself. But what was the largest man you ever served with, and who was the smallest? Can you talk about some of their qualities and what they made them important parts of your team?
Well, as far as largest, is it physical or size?
Probably size-wise, yes, sir.
Size-wise, we had big guys. Like, you got to remember, it's different eras, right? Now, the era I served in, we would consider what you call cold era Rangers, right? And so the GWOT Rangers didn't start until around 2002 when the war started. And so the Army went through a transition as far as the regiment went through a transition too. Also, the missions and the skill sets changed. So when I served as a Ranger, our main emphasis was on running, endurance, just running, and rucking. Right, running and rucking, right? We were kind of wiry. We had big guys, biggest guy probably around 230. I remember his name was Avery. He was with Charlie Cooper 175, big muscular bodybuilding type guy. And he was one of the biggest Rangers, but you didn't keep a lot of weight or size on because you ran so much. But now these Rangers now, I had an opportunity to go to the 4th anniversary of the Grenada invasion, and the 1st Ranger Battalion hosted us. And so I had a chance to visit their compound. It was absolutely like night and day. So these modern day Rangers on the same level as our Delta was back when I served. They're doing extraordinary things. And I always tell people they're much bigger than we are. They're more stronger, but they have the technologies. The diets are different. Plus their gym, their facility. It was like an Olympic training center. Matter of fact, the 1st Ranger Battalion, one of their trainers, he was like the strength coach for the New York Giants for a number of years. You got these world-class nutritionists and Olympic nutrition level. So they got they get Pacific diets. So they got the best of the best. And we just didn't have that back in our days. But I tell people that the Rangers of my era, we will still be able to accomplish any mission that these modern Rangers have, even with the technologies that we have back then, because it's all up in here.
Oh, I mean, just to show a picture, I'm going to show a picture of a Vietnam team from Mr. Gary sent me. I mean, look at those guys. They're not. Some of them are pretty thick, but they're rather short or average sized men. With some of them are fairly wiry, but there's a whole lot of kick ass right there in that photo, waiting to get into the bush, I'd say. So it definitely isn't always the size of the dog. It's the size of the fight in the dog. And some of those smaller guys are the ones you got to watch out for, because they'll unleash it real quick on you. I've heard some stories of some of the smaller guys being more feared, especially in SOG, than some of the bigger guys.
Yeah, there were 2 guys. One was name is Johnny Breach. I think Johnny was around 5'6", 5'7", short guy. Another guy, Michael Passmore, he was short. That picture. Oh yeah, that's you can see what we're doing in the uniforms, OG 107s, the weapon systems. But the black man in the back, right there, his name is Stan Evans, right? Stan is interesting. Stan was with Charlie Company, and he's with a blackened position doing Desert One.
Oh,
right. He's on the blocking position. So when he went to Desert One, doing our Iranian hostage situation, his Jeep team was at a blocking position, right? And so their job was to make sure that nothing gets on that airfield. And so he told me that he at the blocking position, his bus pulls up, right? So they stop the bus. It's in a book. You ever read the book called The Guts to Try?
Yes, sir. Yes,
they
sir.
mentioned him. So he goes on the bus, and so this English-speaking Iranian said, "Who are you guys?" He said, "We're Nigerian commandos." So
that's
said,
such.
Yeah,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
And so he says, "Yeah, Max, we told him to get off the bus, and we're getting ready because we're going to take him with us because we would have been compromised." He said, "But then all of a sudden, a big old fireball happened, explosion, and hey, they're on their own."
Well, I mean, that is a sad occurrence, but it also solidified the need to get everything in JSOC and everybody on the same page. It's a horror story. We've heard from Mr. Mike Vining about it, but good things came out of it, even though with some deaths. But I have an interesting photo because it looks like y'all have got each of y'all's job titles here. You've got, it looks like somebody with the rappelling rope. You've got you with your pistol, I think. Is that a Browning? It looks like he may have a Browning high power with his rappelling rope, and then a sniper, and then you're all around. Looks like an M16 he's got.
Yeah, M16 one. But you look at the tactical vest that the sniper is wearing, the Sergeant Washington. That's the first generation type, vest, tactical vest and packs.
Oh, wow. That's great to know. Wow. So with the Ranger,
he's wearing too. Cliff is wearing. Yep.
Okay. Wow. So with the Rangers at this point in time, guys, I'm going to be getting to y'all's questions. Did y'all? I know it's in modern times, so I guess everything's caught up with y'all. Did y'all have a set weapon? Did it just matter what was it called up for? Did y'all always have CAR 15s, M16s, what have you, or was it just a mission oriented to what y'all would be carrying that day or mission?
Well, in when I served the Ranger Battalion, each position had this specific assigned weapon. Like you have the saw with your automatic rifleman, right? He had the saw. Then each of the teams had an M203, right? And then you had your regular rifleman carry the pistol. Now the NCOs and officers, like the platoon sergeants and platoon leaders, they would carry the CAR 15. But then, depending, like say for instance, you start going mission set. Oh, that's an interesting photo right there. You do a mission set, you would have like specific weapons like building clearing, things like that. So you would change out your weapon system for whatever type of mission you're going on. This picture right here, you see the guy up there on the far right standing? Yeah, his name is Ian Cauffield, right? When we jumped into Grenada, Ian Cauffield, he did a water landing, right? And so he lost all his equipment. And if you ever read the book by Joe Mucci, it's called Cry Havoc. It's about the chronicles, the history of the Grenada invasion. It talks about when I mentioned I saw Ian coming out of the water. I asked him, "Wait, what happened to your equipment?" It was a stupid question. He just turned and pointed to the water, So he eventually died in a motorcycle accident, but he went on to serve in SF 7th Group down with the guys in Panama. Great guy. And the other guy in this going over to the left with the PC on, over one more. His name is Davis. Davis, interesting thing about him, he was a former Marine and he fought at Quezon.
Wow.
He was at Quezon, right? We used to always tease him, but unfortunately he died in a horrific accident. He was with the Georgia President system, and the bus he was on, escorting President, did a head-on collision and he lost his life.
Oh, God. What group? What time frame was this? What battalion were you with at this point?
That's not battalion. That was the Morgan team.
Oh, okay.
That's the Morgan team. That was around. I say the picture around 86. Around 86, 87. Yeah.
Wow. And where was this photo taken at? Was it at?
That's the old area. The old area. They moved it to its current location. But that's the old area right there.
Okay. Okay, that's a great photo of all of y'all together. That we've got some good ones that I'll bring up. Oh, actually, since I've got this photo, I'll guys are always interested about SOG connections, and one thing that's been coming up is some posts on some of the African American SOG men, which I'm trying to get together. And you actually knew one of the more famous SOG men, Mr. Willie Murkison.
Oh,
Right
yes.
here. And there's Captain Roy Weems, if I'm not mistaken. But could you speak a little bit about what it was like getting to know Mr. Willie?
Willie Murkison, extraordinary man, extraordinary. This man, I met Willie this year at a legacy event, right? The legacy events where former African, well, I hate that word African American, former Black American
Sorry
SF
about
guys
that.
get together, and it's chronological history, right? So I met Willie, and the crazy thing about Willie is that we got to talking, and he was on Okinawa when I was there, right? And so remember I was telling you about Sergeant Cherry put the green beret on my head?
Yes, sir.
Him and Sergeant Cherry were friends. So when he found out, I told him how I met Sergeant Cherry. He said, "You know Booker?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Man, I've been trying to find Booker." So I caught Booker on the phone to call him. And so they're talking, right? And so Willie told me that he went, he's one of the first group of men to get to go over there into Vietnam, right? Deploy. That's when they were outbreak. Because I remember that Sergeant Cherry, they were going TUI back and forth, and all of a sudden they got permanent change of station over there. And so fifth group was there, first group was there. And so he was there for procuring equipment and stuff like that. Right? That was one of his big things, procuring equipment. And if you take a look at that guy in the John Wayne and the Green Berets, one that always scrounge up stuff. What's his name? Sergeant. He always scrounge up stuff, right?
Danielson, or gosh,
Danielson. Yeah,
Danielson.
Daniel, right? And so Willie kind of like did that, got trucks, vehicles, and things like that, right? And so then he went on to start doing recon missions, right? He did recon missions. And so then he was called back to go to OCS. He went to OCS, got his commission, went back to Vietnam, back to CCC, I believe, doing extraordinary things. And then he was called to be a company commander at K Company Rangers, 75th. So we didn't do K Company Rangers, right? Then they called him back to SF. So during his time in SF, he received a DSC, Distinguished Service Cross for his actions he did over there in Vietnam. But then recently, his DSC was put up for upgrade. And last month, it got upgraded to a Medal of Honor.
Yes, sir. I was so pleased to see about that, because not only he had, which is officers ran recon, as people know, and all that, but it was few and far between, and especially men to continue doing it while being an officer. And there he is, a captain at this time. He's running recon, and whenever teams need help, he'll jump out there and do it. But he was also, as you said, at this point in time, the recon company commander as the captain, and then goes over and works as the commander for the Rangers, which is just outstanding. Yeah. There's a few of the CCC guys that I'm going to be posting them out here soon that were in the same Ranger. Was it L or K at that time?
K Company. Yeah, you had a number of Ranger companies. Each division had a Ranger company. Like L Company was 101st. K Company was 4th ID. November Company was 173rd Airborne Brigade. And Charlie Company, I want to say Charlie Company was
52nd.
I forgot what Charlie Company was. Charlie Company Angels.
Okay, he I know he went with the 4th ID ones as well.
K Company.
Yeah, there was heck, I think even Mr. Fred Zabatowski was over there with them for a while after his Medal of Honor. So that's what I like showing people. The Rangers and SOG, people think, I mean, they are separate because one was out of country, one was in country, but they had such a intermeshing among men that had gone to Ranger school or been in the regiment pre-SOG or post-SOG, and it's just a neat congruence of personalities and men coming back and forth. It's just, I've always found that very interesting in researching. Someone was curious about some Grenada things have come up. Would you ask him about the Ranger gun jeeps in Grenada?
Yes, the gun jeeps came about. It was happened during the Iranian hostage situation, right?
Mm.
That right there is that's one that one right there was the birth of airfield seizures, Rangers dabbling into special operations. And so what happened? They had Charlie Company, a 175, with Captain Granger as the CO. They deployed right when they were getting this mission together to go in and rescue the hostages, right? So I remember they got the gun jeeps, M551 gun jeeps, and so they started modifying things to be at blocking positions, right? It was a standard gun jeep with the pintle with the M60 machine guns, but we kind of juiced them up. We added like M202 flash grenades. We bungee cord our rucksacks. We also bungee cord the M60 machine guns. We had a crate with laws in the back, a milk crate with laws. And so we also carried the Stinger missile set. And so then when we got back from Iran, from the Desert One, we deployed to Fort Bliss, Texas. And so that's when Second Ranger Battalion came down. We started really training up for airfield siege type missions. And then we started doing that. We started doing that for the longest. We started getting away from our standard mission and started like patrolling, raids, ambushes, recons and stuff, right? And we're really diving deep into the airfield seizures and stuff. So fast forward, probably another picture of me in a gun jeep. And so then we had the M551 Jeeps. And so then gradually around in the 80s, they painted them black and it got the big tires on them, the big tires. And they put a roll bar on it and they kind of modified it a little bit, the gun Jeeps, right? I got a picture, I'll send it to you. It's my Sergeant Swift and them. So we went from there. Then we transitioned to the RSOVs. The RSOV, that's the RSOV. We transitioned to the RSOVs, right? And I was one of the first ones to go through the driving course of driving the RSOVs, right? And the RSOV is based off, it's called a Ranger Special Operations Vehicle, is based off of British design. And so on there, we had the 50 cal machine gun on the right side. There was a pintle for the M60 machine gun. As you can see over there, you see the rack where we had M203. We had a Stinger missile pack. And so the 50 cal can either have a Mark 19 or the 50 cal on there. So the 50 cal, that right there is what you call a commander equivalent Jeep. And we had the infrared type lights, covers, put on the lights before we do our missions and stuff.
Boy, that thing looks like y'all are ready to rock and roll on that bad boy.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody had another one. Guys, I'm getting to them, but this one tied in with the gun with the Jeep. Let's see here. Ask him about the gun Jeep that got blown up by Cubans with an RPG. Do you know about any of that happened? Any Cubans getting?
Yeah, well, that happened during the initial insertion, right? I think it was one of the gun Jeeps was going. It didn't get blown. It got lit up in an ambush, right? They were going to True Blue campus, and they got ambushed by some Cubans.
That's and I believe someone was curious about the actual jump in for y'all. Curious as to, gosh, where in the heck did that? There it is. Could Max go into detail a bit on his jump in? I believe they were under direct fire in the aircraft, weren't they?
Yes, what happened was that the aircraft was staggered. And you had First Ranger Battalion, First Ranger Battalion. They were kind of lead, so we had the aircraft. They're in trail formation, and so originally the mission was supposed to be an airland mission, right? Airland, but with the jump mission as an option, right? And so what happened is that we had our parachutes loaded up on our aircraft, but we didn't have reserves, right? And so when we were planning, because I was part of the planning, make a terrain model, we were planning the airland and we were supposed to do a foot march because our original assembly area was supposed to be on the west end, the east end of the runway, and we were supposed to roll march to Cavallini Barracks. When our Spanish-speaking soldiers supposed to go over Bullhorn and say, hey, stay where you're at, blah, blah, you're going to get evacuated through the Red Cross back to Cuba. But it didn't quite work out like that. So I believe the first pass, we started getting reports, right, because we were picked up by Russian trawlers we started getting reports that, hey, they're putting obstacles out on a drop zone, right? And so when they put obstacles on drop zone, vehicles, concertina wire, trucks, whole 9 yards, because it was a 10,000-foot one-way. And so then they said, hey, we're jumping in. Now, it was a SEAL team that's supposed to insert it in, but the SEAL team, I think they drowned it in high waves. And so a lot of chaos. A team made it on. Then you had the Marines. They were on their way to Beirut, because remember, we had the Beirut bombing during that time. And so they were tasked with the mission of invading from the north part of the island. So when we jumped in, we got the word, hey, rig up. We're jumping in. We're jumping in. So we started rigging up. And we all said, hey, we ain't got no damn reserves. And so to show you the difference in the SOPs, first, when I was assigned to 1st Ranger Battalion, my first tour with the Rangers, whenever we jump, we always jump with our weapons exposed, right? But then when I was assigned to 2nd Ranger Battalion, we jumped with weapons in an M1950 weapons container, right? So even though we're Rangers, the SOPs were a little bit different back then, because you had the 2 battalions, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. And so what happened, myself, Sergeant Bachman, we knew how to, Sergeant Bachman, he was the jump master on an aircraft. We served in 1st Bat together. So we kind of like had to help give a class on how to jump the weapons exposed. So we got all rigged up. Then they said, no, we're going to air land. So we took the parachutes off, just threw them in a big pile. Then a few minutes later, said, nope, hey, we jumped back in, so we had re-rigged. All right, so we re-rigged. And so when we jumped in, we started getting reports that the first pass took heavy anti-aircraft fire, and we got jumpers on the ground. So if we got jumpers on the ground, that means we're going in. And so we went in at 500 feet. And so the reason we're going to win at 500 feet, the anti-aircraft gun was positioned on Goat Hill, and they couldn't de-elevate the guns low enough to do effective fire on the aircraft. So they're kind of like flying under the flak. And so when we were flying, the doors are already open. The light was already green. And, I remember Sergeant Bachman said, hey, look, if you don't make it on the first pass, you're going to land in Barbados. Because we only got time for one pass, right? So I said, I'm getting the hell out of this aircraft. So we're standing there for around 10, 15 minutes. Weight was unbearable, ungodly. And so you didn't jump out. You just like fell out. And 500 feet is like, I tell people, like jumping off the hood of your car. That's how close it seems. And then we jumped in the winds gusting up to 20 knots. And in civilian time, you don't jump with winds gusting over 12 knots is a no jump. But since it's combat, all rules go out the book. And so when I jump, I release my rucksack. You have what you call a lowering line that extends down, and your rucksack would land first, attached to your lower line, then you'll fall. But when I released mine, it was such a low level, I had twisted my risers, and I released it, hit the runway and ripped open, ammunition flying out my ruck. And I hit that runway so hard, I was getting dragged across the pop canopy. Got stuffed it back in my rucksack, jerry rigged it with some, lowering line. But as I jumped, as the aircraft went, I could see the aircraft. I could see the anti-aircraft fire going over the aircraft. But then Spectre showed up and started lighting up Goat Hill, so that neutralized that anti-aircraft fire that they received from Goat Hill.
Lord, that's I mean, I don't know anything more pucker factor inducing than that. I mean, I got goosebumps hearing that right now.
So it was legit. It was a legit combat jump. It was legit. It was you were receiving fire. Now some of the other combat jumps, hey, it is what it is.
We've got a viewer. Frank says. Wait, let me get right here. Frank says, Bud, my dad's A team was liaisoned with that SEAL team, so they don't make contact, and his ODA split continue on with a crazy night. So that, that we've got a few people in that were locking out of some submarines. Let my dad know he locked out of the submarine in Grenada. So there were some viewer family members there as well. Let's see here. There was something. Oh, this is a good one right here. Jason, your questions are good closer questions we'll end with. Josh was curious. before it became in the 90s, before it became declassified, well, clearly you already knew SOG but how much was it spoken about? How much what were the men known about on bases where they were at? What was that like being around SOG when it was still technically classified?
Well, the thing about that, we had some SOG guys in the Ranger Regiment. I mean, in Ranger Battalion. This before, we had SOG guys. I remember it was 2 or 3 SOG guys in first bat. So they were there. Matter of fact, Major Howard, Medal of Honor recipient, he was one of the first company commanders in 2nd Ranger Battalion with SOG. And also
General Bargewell.
Yeah. So we had the SOG guys there. And so we would get those 101s with the SOG as far as SOPs and stuff. No, when like I said, I was in Korea. That's when I met what's his name, McIntyre. He gave me tips of the trade and stuff like that. So that's how you read about SOG. And you were lucky to get a McVie SOG Recondo School manual, right, which I have. And so we went off after actual reviews and notes that we had privy to being in the Ranger Battalion that was not privy to other outside people. Just like the Sante Raid, right? We had raiders assigned. And you read the book, The Raid, by, that's one of the first books I read about the raid. But then you want to know about the intricate part, because the raid talks about the overall mission scheme, but I always want to learn about first soldier experience on the ground. So that's when I learned that with, when we were making a movie called 27 Minutes Over Sante. That's me standing behind Tyrone Adderley. He received the DSC on the raid, right? He went to the White House with Bull Simons, received the DSC on the raid. That I portray him in 27 Minutes Over Sante, and that's Jacob Venke, right? He is the one that lit up all those Chinese that were pouring out of the building. He said, "Man, I'm gonna skip 100 of them, man. I'll lit that ass up," right? And that's Jose Gordon behind him. Jose, the interesting man. Jose has 2 combat jumps. He jumped into Grenada and also jumped into Panama. He portrayed Jacob Venke in there.
And guys, if y'all not seen that, I'll see if it's okay with Mr. Max if I share one of the earlier little clips of it. But y'all can find it. But it's online, and y'all need to find. This is another great photo as well. On the range, I think maybe practicing, and there's Mr. Tyne.
That is me with Tyrone Adderley. And so what made this documentary so unique is that we had the mission planners, we have Tyrone Adderley, and I sat and talked to Tyrone. So the equipment I'm wearing is 100%, 102% accurate, everything. So when he saw the equipment, he said, "Man, Max, that's exactly what I wore." And we had the those weren't Car 15s; those were called the I forgot the name they used for it. They called the car, but we had the aim point lights that they used. And so 100% accurate. Unlike a lot of documentaries, you take a look at the documentaries, said, "Dude, why are they wearing a Kevlar?" I didn't wear Kevlar in Vietnam, but what we're wearing is 110% accurate. Brown, the OD green t-shirts and so forth. That's me. That's me and Tyrone. That's on the set of Sante Raid. And another picture of me, Tyrone, and Jacob Venke. All 3 was in the Ranger Hall of Fame. Unbelievable.
That's and guys, I posted a link to the Ranger Hall of Fames, and if y'all want to read about some crazy men, we've had Mr. Jim Grimshaw on, who is a Hall of Fame, and I think Mr. Gary's in there now as well.
Yeah, but Gary Linder's in there also. Yes.
These 3 men right here, y'all need to look. Mr. Jake Sante Raider, Ranger legend. I believe he was also SF, wasn't he, though?
Both of them SF. Both of them SF, and both of them served in Vietnam with SF.
Just outstanding. And he was in for, I mean, he stayed into what, the late 70s, 80s, wasn't he?
Or, yeah, 80s, yeah. He stayed, yeah.
I mean, just a beast of a man. I've heard Mr. Greg speak a little bit about him and his training with Mr. Mike, who we're about to get on that to close the show. But I wanted to show a few cool photos of you.
That's when I was Ranger Instructor.
That's an amazing, and look at that mini tower of power you got going right there. So this was at Ranger School in Benning, or?
Yeah, that's at Benning. That was Benning. That's like a publicity photo.
Oh wow. I was about to say you it looks awful clean and crisp, looking like it needs to be in a photo magazine or a recruitment ad right there. Perfect recruitment ad, to be honest with you. Um and here are some of the martial arts. I think the guys would like to hear a little bit about your combatives, you being not the forefather, if you will, but the modern keeper of the flame of Ranger combatives and hand-to-hand combatives.
Well, yeah, yeah. You hear? I've been involved in martial arts ever since 1973. I've been involved in martial arts one way or the other, and Michael Diachanis, matter of fact, we're submitting him for the Ranger Hall of Fame. Mike Diachanis, he served with the Rangers. I believe he served with Charlie Company Rangers, and he was injured in an ambush when and so he got out. He rehabbed himself, got with Joe Bong Lee, right, and really got to Hapkido, not Hapkido, but Hong Reng Do, which is a form of Hapkido, right, and so. Grandmaster Joe Bong Lee, he studied under him and he got rehabbed. And so Micah Chanis, extraordinary man, he went back and he started a combatives program for the special forces, right? And so Jacob Vinke and some other legends were part of that initial program at Smoke Bomb Hill when he started it up. And Mike got deep into a lot of things. They got to the mental state, the mental state, silent sentry techniques. He got into some ground techniques, but the guy was absolutely extraordinary as far as martial art. And he died an untimely death. He started working over there in Nicaragua with Somoza, and he was killed in a suspicious airplane crash, blown up. But he left a legacy. He was inducted to Chuck Norris's Hall of Fame, Martial Arts Hall of Fame. And he was supposed to, matter of fact, he was supposed to, on his way back to Nicaragua, he's supposed to hook up with Chuck Norris and be the next, action adventure star. But unfortunately, his untimely death. But Greg Walker is writing a book about Micah Chanis. And Micah Chanis is one of the most extraordinary martial artists. And he is the father of the modern Army combative system. He is the one that got it started out, right? Micah Chanis. And so Chanis started a martial arts program up. And so when I was assigned as a Ranger instructor, I was deeply involved when I got assigned there in 86. I told them, look, we really need to upgrade the Army combatives, right? Because at that time, Army combatives have not been upgraded since 1954. And a lot of the techniques that were utilizing old judo type techniques and things like that. And I wanted to bring some new light to it, to modernize it, right? So I got with our commander, and they said, yeah, no problem, but you're going to do it on your own dime. And so I had to go out there. And so my basis for the martial arts for Army combatives was you want to deal in ranges. You want mid-range, close range, mid-range, and long range, right? You want to be able to fight in those different ranges and transition to those different ranges also. So you got to remember, this is before the UFC and Jiu-jitsu that became popular. This is before that. So you had to work with the tools and the techniques that you had available to you. And so I went out and got with, I studied I read a lot about Micah Chanis and used some of his techniques because he had 3 books out, extraordinary books. And I got them when they first came out. And so adapted some of those techniques in a martial arts program. And then I got hooked up with Sifu Francis Fong. Sifu Francis Fong, he studied under Yip Man, that was Bruce Lee's instructor, right? And Sifu Francis Fong, he was a Wing Chun Kung Fu, right? And also he did Kylie because he was really good friends with Sifu Daniel Santos. And those who don't know Daniel Santos, he is the one who Bruce Lee fought in the game to death with the Kali sticks. That's Sifu Daniel Santos. Now, Sifu Daniel Santos, what people realize that he served in the 101st Airborne. He was in the 101st, right? He served distinctly. So he studied under Bruce Lee. And so Sifu taught Wing Chun Kung Fu He also taught Kali stick fighting, and also he taught Muay Thai, right? And so I felt those were the three types of, to be incorporated as far as wrestling, to be incorporated judo techniques to make an effective fighting system. So it will not be called any particular system, it'll be called Army Combatives. Its own system, Combatives, Army Combative System, fighting system, right? And so when I went on this endeavor, I told Sifu, look, this is not like Max Mullin, Combatives Manual or Sifu French. This is Army Combatives Manual. But one thing about Sifu, he said, Sergeant Mullen, as long as the techniques are used, that the American soldiers can come home alive. So I hooked up with Sifu, and Sifu would come down with a Ranger Instructor, and he would come down on his own dime. He would train us up. I mean, we learned stick fighting, and so with the stick fighting, we were able to transition from stick, knife, open hand, right? Open hand and stuff, right? And that right there, that was more for theatrics, for show. That was part of the hand-to-hand demo, right? But we would incorporate that stick, knife, and be able to transition, make it simple, like you'd be able to go on angles. So if you go on an angle of attack, you can go to angle attack with a knife, stick, anything, because angles are angles, right? And so we incorporated that, and it was a 2-year endeavor. And so we got it together, and at the time, we didn't have, the Army manuals didn't have pictures. You had to draw them. So the photographer would come out there, take thousands of pictures of us going to all these different techniques. And so then he'd go in there and draw them, had to go out there to build them for and show them which direction the technique is flowing. And so it took around 2 years to get the Army Combatives Manual together. That was on FM 21-150, right? So it's finally published for the United States Army, right? The manual. And so fast forward, then all of a sudden the UFC started becoming real popular. The Gracies came, UFC won, and they started choking people out and stuff. So the next big thing was jiu-jitsu. And so Second Ranger Battalion, they saw this, so they were sending instructors down there to the Gracies in San Diego, California to learn the jiu-jitsu concept. And they would take it back, teach the Second Ranger Battalion guys, banner day, they choking everybody out and so forth like that. And so then they started picking up steam, so jiu-jitsu became popular in the regiment. So when one of the instructors, he got assigned to the Ranger Department, because at that time, the Ranger Department was the POI as far as combatives for the United States Army, period. And so I would get things like, Dr. Joe Jack, Army, no, that's not legit. No. Or there's another guy named Paul Vunak. He was out there doing stuff with SF. He was legit. So you had other people out there doing stuff with the military. That right there is a key demonstration. Mike Chanis, he did key demonstrations. He taught that too. That's one of the key demonstrations I did. Buckets full of water, walking on glass, laying on a bit of glass, laying on a bit of nails, holding back people with one hand and so forth like that. It's key chi. There's a lot of controversy about it, but I'm telling you, that stuff it's legit. It's real. But so, and so then Matt Larson, he became a Ranger Instructor, so he started implementing and updated the Army Combatives Manual. And so then then they kind of with the Army Combative System. And so then it came with Army Combative School. And so the Army Combative is what it is. So I applaud him. Hats off to him for taking Army Combatives to the next level, right? Now, when I was assigned to the 75th Ranger Regiment, I made an attempt to get a program. This is around 92. I tried to get a combative system. Oh, that's standing on glass, jumping up on with glass. So I tried to get an Army combative system going where each one of the Ranger battalions would send some instructors down to Fort Benning, where we'll put on an Army combative program for around 2 weeks, trainer. They would go back and start teaching teaching combatives to each one of the Ranger battalions and have like a subject matter expert where we keep up on our combatives, but we don't have support from in command when it's not a priority. This ain't going to come to fruition. So I still got all the notes and stuff like that. Worked diligently hard to try and get this done, but it just didn't happen. But the next person came along, got the support, and so it is what it is today. So as far as like the modern day combatives, I would have to say Mike Chanis. You give credit to where it's due. I was just happy that I was able to help facilitate it, take it to the next level, and then it's gone to a whole different level now. So that's the history.
Absolutely. And we're getting ready close to getting to closing out here, but I thought I'd show a few more pictures. I think you had mentioned this was during one of the live fire exercises that y'all were conducting.
Yeah, that right there, it shows you the standard equipment that the Rangers used back pre 1980s, BDUs. That right there was I'm wearing my LCE, but we started getting the first generation LBVs, load bearing vests, right, which sucked, right? That's the LBV. Wearing the LBV, load bearing vest. They were sorry. And that's the standard issue car 15 that the platoon leader, platoon sergeant wore. And we slept in a poncho hooches that was taken out there on Kilo 22. A Ranger ejected at Fort Benning. Well, Fort Moore now.
Wow. Yeah, I have to constantly keep catching myself and saying Fort Moore.
Well, I served when it was Fort Benning, so I keep calling it Fort Benning.
I was about to say, much like the vets who served at Fort Bragg, going to continue calling it
It's
Fort
always
Bragg.
Fort Bragg. That right there was the first Ranger Battalion. That right there is we had a combatives demonstration team where we go to different events and put on combatives, air repelling and stable demonstration, hand-to-hand combative demonstration to show the capability of the Rangers. That right there is, at that time, Sergeant First Class Ronnie Laws. He's also in the Ranger Hall of Fame. Ronnie Laws was a beast in Vietnam.
Oh yes, oh yes. That's why I said, guys, y'all have got to go through the Ranger Hall of Fame. They've got a great website and a great collection of not only the men who were in there, but some of their accolades throughout their career, but also some of the wars that they may have served in, some of their more notable incidents, if you will. And here's one more before we do the last closing, because you've got uh, well, we'll talk about that after this photo. I believe this is your Ranger photo.
Yeah, that photo right there was taken at the dedication of the Ranger Memorial and activation of the 75th Ranger Regiment. In that picture, there's some legends. You got guys who jumped in the Grenada and Panama. The guy, take the cursor up, over to your right. That right there is Sergeant First Class, First Sergeant Harvey Moore. He died at that antelope training exercise in Utah when we lost the 2 battalion commanders. Harvey Moore, he's in the Ranger Hall of Fame. He's also the best Ranger competition winner. The guy was a beast. Halo, scuba, great man, great. We were roommates together, knew him really well. Good friend of mine.
Good Lord, yeah.
Then you go to the left some more. One more. Oh, that's Pickering. Pickering, he served at. That right there is Jose Gordon. He jumped into Panama and Grenada, and the guy right behind him, the Black Ranger, right? Yeah, that's Josh. He also conducted 2 combat jumps, Grenada and also Panama. Unfortunately, passed away a year and a half ago.
From the looks of it, there's some studs in this group right here.
Yeah. That's right there is Jerry Klein. He's the 3rd Battalion Sergeant Major. He jumped into Grenada. He's also in the Ranger Hall of Fame.
Good Lord. I mean, everyone we've listed so far is Hall of Fame. Wow. And I thought to close on kind of a lighthearted / pretty interesting. Well, one question first. Jason was curious what came after the load bearing vest.
Okay, it's kind of crazy, the load bearing vest, right? We started transitioning. You probably seen the movie Black Hawk Down. That's when he had it was called the Ranger body armor, right? He had the plate to the front and also to the back, right? They started wearing that over the regular LCE. And then they transitioned to that when the war started out, the GWAP Rangers. That's when they started. You have all these different companies coming out with these different vests, right? And so it just morphed. They started getting stuff off the shelf like Black Hawk. They would make stuff. Then you had all these different industry people. They supply. So, like for instance, 75th Ranger Regiment, they wear the Solomon boots. They wear Solomon boots. I think they wear black. It's called. I forgot the industry they use, but they have Pacific. They had an opportunity to buy the equipment that they need off the shelf.
And one thing I thought would be pretty interesting to close with your action figures that came out. I found that very interesting, and this is I thought originally, which was funny because when we were talking about it, I thought this was an actual photo of an action figure, but come to find out, this is an actual photo of Mr. Max himself, not an action figure.
Yes, and also that picture's not photoshopped, and I'm not on performance enhancing drugs. What happened with that picture there? I hit a little bit of depression, gained a lot of weight, got up to around 240 pounds, waist got up to 40 inches, body fat got to something like 23, 24%. And I was going through some major depression, right? And crazy, one of my Rangers, right? He became one of the founding members of Nutrix Bodybuilder Supplements. And I haven't seen him in years. And he said, Max, you want to really believe in me and supplement stuff. And he said, you're my platoon sergeant, man. You're a flipping mess, man. You aren't like that. Because I used to train him and his wife for bodybuilding competitions. He said, all I'll do is if you take our products and get yourself in shape, we'll put you into our magazine. And that's exactly what I needed to bust it. So it was around an 18-week transformation. I took before, mid, after pictures. So I was invited down to their corporate headquarters. And I went in there and he said, take your shirt off. I took my shirt off. They just flipped out. And I was 50 years old in that picture. And so he said, so the vice president comes in. The first words out of his mouth, he said, what do you take? And I said, nothing. And he said, are you taking insulin or HGH? He said, no, I just took your supplements and I just busted my butt in the gym. And Jeff said, he said, Max, if you tell me that, he did. I said, you can take blood, urinalysis, I don't care. And I never even heard of TRT. We weren't even doing TRT back then. I mean, I went in there and I absolutely busted my butt. So if you want something, you got to put in the effort. People think they go into the gym and just, do that. You got to go beyond the pain zone. And so I did that. The picture appeared in all the magazines and publications, just took off.
It is, you look like a Greek god in that, to say the least. Here's one, there's, I believe there's 3 action figures. Here is one of them that is just outstanding, got the gear correct. Loaded for bear. And there is one right here. Let me pull up to where people, if they're interested, because I know a lot of the viewers are collectors, not only of patches, but of action figures and collectibles. And this is one from the 75th Ranger Regiment, and it goes through all of his gear, his backpack. Literally everything you could want to learn. It's got everything. And here is his loadout right here. And that is, I gotta say, that's pretty badass, sir, to have your own action figure like this.
It's crazy because when I was approached to do the action figure, they said, Max, we'll do action figure. I said, for what? I'm nobody, right? And they said, you'd be surprised how many people know you. And so I said, sure, let's do it. So the first series, that one, right, that's the second one, but the first one with the BDUs, it was put out, I think it was a limited edition, maybe 600 something figures. And when it was put out, it just took the action figure community by storm. In Japan, it was voted one of the most realistic action figures. The first action figure that wasn't based off a Hollywood themed actor, sports, anything like that, but an actual person, right? And so then that one just really just took off. So they approached me again next year. They were like, do another one. I said, dude, they already got one. So that one just sold out. And so the first one was Sideshow Toys were doing a series on the Civil War. That's when the movie Glory and all that was really big. And so they approached me and said, hey, like you use their likeness for one of the action figures for the Civil War. I said, yeah, let's do it. And so I took the pictures and everything. And so then a friend who kind of represented me said, hey, were you approached by them to do action figures? I said, yeah. He said, don't do it, man. I said, why? He said, action figure. He said, bro, don't do it. And I said, why? So he went on to explain to me. He said, look, that figure, the 54th, is based off Glory, the movie, and also Denzel Washington, right? But even though historically it's based off the first Black Medal of Honor recipient, but it's kind of being pushed off of the movie Glory. So if that's the case, they would have to pay Denzel Washington for his likeness. We had to pay Sony Pictures for the publishing rights for the action figure. Dude, so with your likeness, guess what you're getting? 12 action figures. Don't do it. I said, you're right. So nixed it. But the other 2 action figures are so popular, people ask me all the time, where can I get one? Just letting you know, there is word that a 3rd action figure may be coming out, so stay tuned.
Okay, that's good. That's big news dropping right here. We always enjoy that, and I'll keep people abreast of that. We've hit our 2 hours and 30-minute mark. I didn't know we'd get this deep into it, but I'm glad we did. This has been a wonderful start to 2024. Did you have anything else you'd like to close out with before we end for the day, sir?
Yeah, real quick in closing, I want to talk about the Rangers, how L Company Rangers, right? I remember the first time I met Gary Linder, these legends, Gary Linder, Larry Chambers, and Ken Miller, was that we had the Rangers, the L Company Rangers had their first reunion, and I want to say it was around '86 at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. So they did their second reunion in '87 at Fort Benning, Georgia. And so I told my buddy, I said, look, we're going to put on a hand-to-hand demo for these guys. It's going to blow their mind. So we went out there, and in that demo, I almost got stabbed in the back from a bayonet and ripped my shirt. And from that moment on, they basically adopted me, part of L Company. Chambers, all those, they're like my big brothers and stuff.
Mr. Larry, as a matter of fact, he tells that story anytime your name comes up, and there's a story on his YouTube page to where he talks about walking in and seeing this huge Ranger working out and getting ready and wanting to do a demonstration, and was just flabbergasted at the size of the Rangers today. And then the demonstration he put on, he was instantly hooked. And I thought that was awesome of them to accept you. They're all great men. I'm glad Mr. Gary he's going to try and get me hooked up with Mr. Larry and have him on. And I'm glad we were able to finally have you on. You were a legend in your own right, and we're just honored to have you on it, and especially to start the year off with you is just superb. So I thank you for spending time with us today and sharing with us.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, you guys give me a follow on Instagram, Max MAX_MULLENN, Max Mullin, right? Or you can hit me up on Facebook. But hey, give me a join and keep up with the craziness. I'm also posting some really crazy content. The Chronicles of One Mad Max. I'll be going to the SHOT Show in a couple of weeks. So I didn't even get into the movie part. Man, that's another whole subject.
Well, hey, how about we plan to have you back in a few weeks if you'd like to get into some of that and cover maybe do a post-SHOT show with us.
I sure will. I'd love to.
And we can get into all that. I think that would be great.
Okay.
Excellent. I again thank you so much, and we're just thoroughly glad you were able to join us and share with us. Everyone's in the comments saying thank you so much, and I'll keep you abreast of everything, and we'll link up like we said for after SHOT Show and get you back for part 2.
America will survive.
Absolutely, and especially with men like you still around.
Thank you, my friend.
Absolutely. You have a great day, and thank you much.
Ranger, lead the way.
Absolutely. Airborne, all the way.